Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quite literally into one of the most fashionable, ridiculous and deeply confusing eras in human history, the Regency period. Yes, the time of empire waistlines, powdered elegance, and shirts so thin they would make today's gym bros weep with jealousy. Before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of soothing historical chaos actually brings you joy. And thank you for suggesting this topic. It was such a fun one to explore with you. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Someone out there is definitely lying awake at 2:17 AM, wondering why men in 1810 insisted on wearing collars so high they could barely turn their heads. Now, dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet under the blanket so an imaginary Regency-era footman doesn't judge your sock choices. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered, why did Regency men wear coats so tight they could barely breathe? Why were women gliding around in dresses that made them look like freshly wrapped loaves of artisanal bread? Who decided pale, sickly-looking men were attractive? Why was everyone obsessed with gloves, so obsessed that losing one could spark a slow-burn romance or a lifelong vendetta? And why, for the love of all things holy, were trousers so tight they required both courage and a shoehorn? Tonight we're answering all of that, slowly, soothingly, and with more historical accuracy than anyone wearing a cravat has ever demonstrated. Because congratulations, you've just woken up in the Regency era. It's 1811. Your hair is too curly, your shirt is too translucent, and there's a 40% chance your tailor hates you. Good luck. You slip into your first Regency gown and immediately realise something is off. The waist sits just under your chest, giving you the silhouette of a fashionable ghost and the posture of someone permanently apologising. It's elegant, yes, but also deeply suspicious, like the dress is hiding state secrets just beneath your ribcage. Let's take a moment to understand what just happened to your body. The empire waistline doesn't follow your shape, it erases it, replacing your normal human proportions with what appears to be a very determined rectangle. Your torso? Gone. Your hips? Irrelevant. Your entire digestive system? Now operating under emotional distress. Somehow this gown manages to make you look both angelic and vaguely unwell, like someone who has recently received bad news from a doctor but is trying to stay optimistic. And as you shift your weight, trying to get comfortable, you quickly realise comfort is not part of the design. The gown flows down from that high bust line in long straight panels that completely ignore your knees. Walking feels less like walking and more like drifting, like you've become a decorative wisp of humanity wandering a manor house in search of closure. If modern fashion tells a story, Regency fashion tells a gentle, apologetic sigh. But let's talk about why this silhouette became the hottest trend in early 18th century Europe. The short answer, Neoclassicism. The long answer, rich people suddenly decided they wanted to look like ancient Greek marble statues, slim, serene, and slightly chilly. The empire waistline was meant to mimic flowing classical tunics. In theory, this was beautiful. In practice, it meant spending your entire day looking like a structurally unstable column with emotional baggage. Now try sitting down. No, really try it. The moment your body bends, the gown reacts like you've broken a sacred oath. The empire waist doesn't fold gracefully. It puckers in strange places and attempts to ride upward toward your chin like a polite but terrified squirrel. Meanwhile, the skirt fans out around you in a wide bell that traps warm air, cold air, and occasionally a passing house cat. Breathing becomes another logistical challenge. Without a defined waistline, the fabric drapes closely around your ribs, giving every inhale the emotional intensity of someone preparing to confess their sins. One deep breath, and suddenly you're reconsidering your life choices, your posture, and possibly your entire personality. And speaking of posture, congratulations, you now have Regency posture, otherwise known as eternal apology stance. Shoulders down, neck long, hands lightly clasped as if asking society for forgiveness. It's a pose that whispers, I am graceful, and also, I might faint. Let's talk fabric. Most empire gowns are made of thin muslins, delicate cottons, or translucent silks, chosen specifically because they drape beautifully and offer zero warmth or protection. Wearing one outdoors in winter is like wrapping yourself in a lightly scented paper towel and hoping the wind feels merciful today. Your shivering is not a fashion mistake, it's historically accurate. Of course, the dress does offer one unexpected benefit: pockets. Just kidding, it offers none. If you want to carry anything, a handkerchief, a coin, a sliver of dignity, you'll need a reticule the size of a lemon tied to your wrist. If you sneeze, it's gone. And yet somehow, you start to understand the appeal. The gown floats around you, catching light in soft folds. You look softer, dreamier, as though your biggest worry is whether the pianoforte will be slightly out of tune at tonight's gathering. People glance your way and assume you're ethereal, thoughtful, and maybe a little mysterious. No one suspects you're just trying not to trip. Empire waistlines weren't meant to be practical. They were meant to be romantic, to hide flaws, blur reality, and whisper to the world, I am delicate, graceful, and processing exactly zero emotions right now. By the time you've worn it for an hour, you know the truth. The empire waistline isn't a fashion trend, it's a lifestyle, a conspiracy of fabric and aspiration, a celebration of form or a complete denial of it. And as you glide forward, half floating, half stumbling, you realize something important. This dress owns you now. And strangely, you're okay with that. You catch a reflection and gasp, not because you look good, but because you look like you haven't seen the sun in 3 months. Congratulations, Regency beauty standards require you to resemble a romantic tuberculosis patient with artistic potential. Let's take a closer look at what's going on with your face. Your skin, once healthy and suspiciously modern-looking, is now the shade of porcelain that hasn't been dusted in a decade. The ideal Regency complexion is ghostly. Less I spend time outdoors and more I faint gently at the sight of a strong opinion. Any hint of a tan suggests dangerous things like manual labour, competence, or the ability to lift something heavier than a quill. Horrifying. The truth is, being pale in the Regency era was a flex. It told the world that you lived a life of leisure, not sunlight. Sunburn belonged to farmers, sailors, and people doing actual work. You, however, are a gentleman of refinement, and refinement means carefully avoiding daylight like a vampire with seasonal allergies. But the pallor is only half the transformation. Direct your attention now to your eyes, those soft dark circles you see forming. Perfect. Regency society adored a man who looked one heartbreak away from penning a devastatingly moving stanza about a wilting rose. If your eyes don't say, I whisper my secrets to candlelight, you're not doing it right. Let's talk hair. Your curls, now gently tousled and just a tad too long, are supposed to look natural, but don't be fooled. That effortless poet look requires maintenance, pomade, and possibly emotional turmoil. You're expected to look like someone who naps irregularly, communes with the muses, and occasionally gazes dramatically out of windows for no discernible reason. Now leaning closer, notice how soft, smooth, and suspiciously free of facial hair your cheeks are. That's intentional. A clean-shaven face was a Regency staple, because nothing says sophistication like a chin that could plausibly belong to a melancholic angel. Beards were rare, too rugged, too practical, too I do things. Regency gentlemen didn't do things, they contemplated things. Of course, looking pale and poetic doesn't stop at the skin, it extends to your entire presence. Hold your shoulders just slightly forward as if weighed down by the burden of your own introspective brilliance. Tilt your head a little, like you're listening to sonnets only you can hear. Walk with a soft pensiveness, the kind that makes people wonder what great tragedy shaped you, even if the only tragedy you face today is a poorly folded cravat. But here's the fascinating part. This wasn't just fashion, it was social currency. Being pale, thin, and gently wilted made you appear refined, sensitive, and worthy of admiration. Women swooned for men who seemed perpetually on the verge of writing an emotional letter or slowly dying of artistic exhaustion. Strength and robustness, overrated. A slender frame that suggests you survive mostly on size and tea. Now that is romance. And don't forget the subtle sparkle of illness that people found weirdly appealing. No one wanted disease, of course, but the aesthetic of fragility was in. Looking a bit delicate hinted at a soul too full of feeling for this cruel, unforgiving world. Modern skincare routines brighten your complexion. Regency routines dulled it to a soft, poetic glow. But the real irony hits you when you step outdoors. The sun peeks out, warm and inviting, and your entire ensemble recoils like a Regency cat encountering a cucumber. Your skin isn't prepared. Your soul isn't prepared. You dash into shade with the urgency of someone avoiding a duel. Eventually you accept your fate. You are now a Regency man, pale as morning mist, sleep-deprived by aesthetic, delicate in a way that suggests you have a tragic backstory, even if you don't. And as you drift through the drawing room, soft, subtle, and slightly anemic, you realise something surprising. You fit right in. Because in the Regency era, looking like a poetic ghost isn't a flaw, it's a compliment. You reach for your neckcloth, only to realise this simple piece of fabric must be folded, twisted, wrapped, sculpted, coaxed, and threatened into shape. No one warned you that getting dressed would require the patience of a monk and the fine motor skills of a surgeon. The cravat looks innocent enough when it's lying flat, a long strip of crisp white lawn or muslin. But the moment you attempt to tie it, it transforms into an ancient riddle wrapped in cotton. There are manuals, actual printed books, containing diagrams and instructions on how to knot it correctly. And by correctly, the Regency era means 37 different acceptable methods, and at least 14 unacceptable ones that will lead to immediate social ridicule. You drape it around your neck, already aware that this is going to affect your entire day. Cravat tying is not something done casually, it is a ritual, a spiritual test. The Regency equivalent of assembling IKEA furniture with your reputation on the line. Each fold must be precise, each wrap must be smooth, each knot must convey something about who you are as a person, reserved, bold, romantic, possibly unhinged. Let's talk about starch. Your cravat must be starched within an inch of its life. This isn't gentle firmness, this is sculptural architecture. Regency starch could hold a shape through a mild thunderstorm and possibly minor emotional trauma. The result is a neckcloth so stiff it feels like wearing a fondant-covered drywall sample. And yet, if it droops even slightly, people will assume you lack discipline, breeding, or the ability to operate a laundry tub. Now begin to tie it, slowly, carefully. Notice how your fingers tense as you attempt the first simple wrap. You tug gently, and suddenly you've created something resembling a wrinkled breadstick. Undo it. Try again. This time the knot is too small. Undo it. Third attempt. You have achieved something that looks almost like a bow, almost like a mess, and entirely like a cry for help. This is normal. The mathematical knot promises elegance, but requires the dexterity of someone who spends their free time carving chess pieces with nail scissors. The Hessian tie suggests rugged masculinity, but somehow still makes you look like you're auditioning for a period drama about emotionally repressed candle makers. And then there's the dangerous one. the male coach knot. A high, rigid wrap designed to immobilize your neck so completely you cannot turn your head without rotating your entire torso like a politely confused owl. By the time you settle on a knot that looks even remotely presentable, you realize something important. You can no longer move your jaw comfortably. Your chin is locked at a heroic angle, as if you're constantly preparing to deliver a grand speech or sneeze dramatically. Swallowing becomes a negotiation. Breathing requires strategy. Step outside and observe how others look. Every man is doing the same stiff-necked shuffle, turning his whole body to greet someone because his cravat has fused with his spine. Social gatherings are filled with people who appear noble, yes, but also dangerously close to passing out. The tighter the knot, the higher the status, which means someone, somewhere, is absolutely tying theirs tight enough to temporarily reduce blood flow to the brain. The irony is that women will glance at your cravat for exactly half a second before deciding what they think of you. But men will judge every pleat with forensic intensity. The Regency era isn't competitive about sports or business cards. It is competitive about neckcloth geometry. And God help you if you spill anything on it. One drop of gravy and your entire day is ruined. You cannot simply dab at it. Cravats do not absorb, they resent. A stain is a moral failing, the kind of social disaster that poets write about in long dramatic verses. Eventually you accept your fate. The cravat owns part of your soul now. You learn the folds, the angles, the subtle art of pretending you're comfortable. And as you glide through the drawing room with your chin held at an unnaturally elevated tilt, you embrace the truth. This is not clothing. This is discipline, elegance, and mild self-endangerment woven into one heroic strip of fabric. And somehow it works. You pull on your shirt and immediately understand why Regency portraits feel personal. This garment hides nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like wearing a whisper that says, "I hope you like clavicles." Let's pause and truly appreciate what's happening to your upper body. The Regency shirt is made of linen so fine and so translucent that the slightest movement reveals the tender outline of your hopes, dreams, and maybe one or two ribs you didn't even know were visible. In today's world, you'd wear something like this only by accident, like when you misjudge laundry day and end up in a shirt that could be accused of indecent transparency. But here, this is intentional. This is fashion. This is vulnerability stitched with delicate thread. The first thing you notice is the softness. It drapes over your skin like a cold sigh, fluttering with every breath. But the second thing you notice is the draft. This shirt blocks no wind, no weather, and certainly no wandering glances. If a butterfly flaps its wings 3 towns over, you feel it right through the fabric. The Regency era wasn't joking round. Men weren't just expected to look refined, they were expected to look fragile. Now lift your arms. Go ahead. You'll quickly discover that the sleeves billow out, like someone inflated them with historical whimsy. They're voluminous, airy, and seemingly designed by a tailor who wanted you to feel both majestic and slightly ridiculous. The cuffs hang past your wrists, brushing against your knuckles in a way that suggests you might, at any moment, compose a heartfelt letter or dramatically faint. And that open neckline? Let's talk about that. Modern collars are crisp, structured, well-defined. This shirt, however, plunges into a modest V that gently exposes your chest like you're a romantic hero, stepping out of a lake in a novel that definitely contains too many adjectives. The laces tie loosely, more symbolic than functional, like the shirt is trying to say, "I could close." But then how would anyone appreciate the artistry of your upper sternum? The shirt also serves a practical purpose, or so they claim. It's meant to be breathable, comfortable, good for layering under waistcoats and coats. But truly it functions less as a garment and more as a suggestion of one. If clothes could whisper, this one would murmur, "I'm not here to protect you, I'm here to create ambience." Now consider movement. As you walk, the fabric sways lightly, tracing the lines of your shoulders and hinting at the shape beneath. You suddenly understand why Regency portraits look so poetic. When the painters captured men in their sheer linen shirts, they weren't exaggerating. They were simply documenting the bold amount of chest contour casually available in everyday life. But the real challenge comes when you try to tuck it in. Regency shirts are enormous, billowy to the point of lawlessness. You gather handfuls of fabric, fold, stuff, smooth, and suddenly realize you've created a small pillow around your waist. This is normal. This is expected. The shirt is half garment, half insulation. Once tucked into tight breeches, it poofs out like an overconfident souffle. Then there's the laundering issue. Thin linen stains easily and dries slowly and keeps no secrets. Sweat, visible. Anxiety, visible. The faint outline of your breakfast, unfortunately visible. The Regency era didn't ask, "Do you feel confident in your body?" It simply said, "Too late. Everyone can see your collarbones." But perhaps the most astonishing part of wearing this ethereal shirt is that somehow it works. The translucence adds softness. The draping creates elegance. Even the slight exposure adds a hint of vulnerability that makes you appear emotionally available, dangerous in any time period. By the time you've worn it for an hour, you understand why Regency heroes were always falling in love, writing poetry, or gazing thoughtfully into the middle distance. It's the shirt. The shirt makes you dramatic. It turns your life into a soft-focus portrait. It convinces you that your clavicles are in fact important to the narrative. And as you catch sight of yourself in a mirror, luminous, delicate, faintly dishevelled, you realise something vital. This isn't just a shirt, it's a personality. You step into your trousers and suddenly comprehend true vulnerability. These breeches are tight enough that one wrong move might alter the family lineage forever. Sitting is now a strategic decision, not a default behaviour. Let's begin by acknowledging the sheer courage it takes to pull these things past your knees. The fabric grips you immediately, clinging with the enthusiasm of a toddler who refuses to let go of your leg at the grocery store. By the time the breeches reach mid-thigh, you're sweating lightly, reconsidering your life choices and whispering gentle affirmations to yourself like, "It's okay. Everyone in this era suffered." But the real challenge begins at the hips. Regency breeches demand commitment. They do not ease onto your body. They ascend your body, each tug a negotiation between dignity and circulation. You begin to wonder whether Regency tailors secretly hated their clients. It would explain so much. The tension, the stiffness, the faint whistling sound your joints make as they start losing hope. Once the breeches finally snap into place, you experience an entirely new sensation: structural immobility. Your lower body is now sculpted, yes, beautifully sculpted, but also compressed to the point where you can feel your ancestors watching, concerned. Your thighs are encased so tightly that they move together like two colleagues forced to share an awkward elevator ride. There is no independence here, only unity. Next, the full front flap, a wide rectangular panel across the front of the breeches, must be buttoned into place. This flap is both functional and deeply comedic. It takes approximately 9 buttons to secure and, once fastened, makes you look like a very polite accordion. The flap lies flat, but it feels like a stern warning. Do not breathe wrong. Now walk, slowly, carefully. Breeches change the physics of your stride. Your steps become short and deliberate, like you're trying not to wake a sleeping cat on your lap. You sway slightly because the fabric forces you into a gentle Regency waddle. At social events, gentlemen glide gracefully not because they are refined, but because they physically cannot take bigger steps without risking a catastrophic breeches explosion. Let's talk about sitting. In your former life, sitting was simple. You bent your knees, lowered yourself, and boom, comfort. Now sitting is a high-stakes performance art. First, you must judge the chair's height, angle, and emotional readiness. Then you lower yourself inch by inch, praying the seams hold, and that you don't accidentally discover the breech's structural limit. Once seated, you sit upright. Very upright. Perfect posture is not a choice, it is a survival mechanism. Leaning forward stretches the fabric too far. Slouching compresses the flap like a sad, wrinkled tent. So you sit with the stiff, noble dignity of someone posing for a portrait or suppressing an urgent secret. And yet these breeches do have a purpose. Tight fabric highlights the shape of your legs, which Regency society considered one of the great indicators of male attractiveness. Strong calves were practically currency. Some men even padded their stockings to achieve that ideal shapely silhouette. So while it feels like you're wearing stylish tourniquets, rest assured, you look fantastic. The colour doesn't help either. Many breeches are pale, cream, buff, soft grey, designed to showcase dust, stains, and the exact contour of your thigh muscles with ruthless honesty. You're not wearing clothing. You're wearing a topographical map of your insecurities, and yet something magical happens around the 40-minute mark. As you move, constrained but elegant, you begin to see why men tolerated this. The posture, the shape, the restrained stride, it creates a look of deliberate refinement. You appear composed, stylish, perhaps even a little dangerous. My circulation is compromised, but my confidence isn't sort of way. By the time you make it through a dance, breathe through a conversation, and successfully sit without injury, you realise a truth every Regency gentleman learned. These breeches may threaten your comfort, your mobility, and your long-term ability to have descendants, but they also make you look incredible. And in the Regency era, that was absolutely worth the risk. You slide on your gloves and notice how people glance at them with the seriousness of analysts studying market trends. In the Regency world, gloves communicate everything, from flirtation to disdain to, I am avoiding your hand like it owes me money. Gloves are more than accessories. They're a fully functioning communication system, an 1811 version of posting, liking, unliking, blocking, and occasionally subtweeting someone all without saying a word. The moment you pull them on, you've entered a world where your fingertips are basically broadcasting your mood in high definition. Start with the basics. Wearing gloves means you're respectable. Only the wildly uncivilized or scandalously dramatic go about in public with bare hands. Bare hands imply you have no shame, no decorum, or perhaps no clean laundry. Gloves shield you from all of that. They paint a picture of refinement, modesty, and someone who has never ever chopped a vegetable. Now examine the gloves themselves. Are they pristine white? Then you are announcing to the world that you're both elegant and wealthy enough to own gloves that will be ruined by even looking at a dusty doorway. Are they pale yellow kid skin? That tells people you appreciate quality and that your hands smell faintly of money. Are they lace? Then you're either attending a ball or making a statement that says, I plan to flirt with someone's cousin tonight. Colour, stitching, texture, every detail is a message. Regency society could decode gloves faster than modern people decode text messages. If someone wore gloves stitched with contrasting thread, that meant fashion-forward confidence. If someone wore gloves slightly past their prime, it meant quiet financial struggle, or an indifference to rules that was equally concerning. But the true artistry lies not in the glove, but in what you do with it. Take the handshake. In the Regency world, shaking hands is intimate, too intimate. It's practically the emotional equivalent of whispering a secret directly into someone's mouth. If you offer your hand gloved, you're saying, "I'll engage with you, but keep some distance." If you remove your glove first, that's basically Regency flirting. That's saying, "I trust you with my unprotected fingers." Scandalous! Then there's the infamous glove drop. If you drop your glove in front of someone deliberately, it's an invitation. A subtle one, yes, but still an invitation to pick it up, return it, and maybe begin a slow-burning romance rooted in hand-associated tension. If you drop your glove in front of someone you dislike, that's not flirting, that's emotional warfare. You're essentially saying, "Fetch this," without using words. Of course, gloves also solve social problems. If someone unpleasant approaches you, you can conveniently adjust your glove, indicating you're too busy to engage. In modern terms, this is the Regency equivalent of pretending to be on your phone. Fiddling with your glove is a polite way to opt out of a conversation, discourage a suitor, or silently judge someone's hat without being obvious. And let's not forget the dance floor. When you attend a ball, gloves are mandatory. Your hands will be touching strangers' hands, and no one wants that level of raw human honesty. Gloves provide a hygienic, polite buffer that says, "I respect you, but not enough to touch your actual skin." They also ensure that if your palms start sweating from nerves, enthusiasm, or simple survival-related overheating, no one will ever know. The glove keeps secrets. But gloves aren't always cooperative. They snag on lace. They trap heat like tiny personal saunas. Buttons pop off at dramatic moments, turning your wrist into a renegade fashion statement. And when gloves are too tight, and they often are, you spend the entire afternoon trying to maintain dignity while your fingers slowly lose circulation. Still, despite their challenges, gloves were essential. They shaped your social identity, your elegance, your interactions, and even your romantic prospects. A well-chosen glove could elevate your reputation. A poorly chosen glove could ruin it. And as you stand there now, hands encased in buttery soft kid skin, you suddenly understand why Regency society obsessed over them. Gloves weren't just clothing. They were personality, strategy, etiquette, and sometimes weaponized passive aggression, all wrapped neatly around your fingers. You slip your toes into dainty slippers that offer as much support as a damp tissue. Fashion in this era is pain, and your archers are about 2 minutes away from filing a formal complaint. The first thing you notice is how thin the soles are. Calling them soles is generous. They're more like polite suggestions of leather. The slippers bend, curl and wilt around your foot like a sad flower that wasn't watered enough. Every pebble becomes a personal attack. Every floorboard knot becomes a betrayal. It takes about 3 steps before you begin questioning whether Regency shoemakers had ever met a foot, or simply designed footwear based on vague rumours. The shoes look lovely, of course, delicate, refined, perfect for gliding around ballrooms and pretending you have no bones. But these same shoes, once introduced to the horrors of outdoor terrain, perform roughly as well as wet cardboard. And not high-quality cardboard, no, the flimsy kind that buckles instantly in humidity. Let's talk shape. Regency slippers have no real heel to speak of, just a slight raise that seems to exist purely for decoration. The toe is gently pointed, as if trying to nudge the world away, while the sides cling to your feet like cling wrap with trust issues. There is no arch support, no cushioning, no shock absorption. If modern shoes are engineered for mechanics and foot health, Regency shoes are engineered for aesthetic suffering. Inside the house, the slippers whisper across polished floors, making you look elegant enough to pass for someone in a period drama. Outside the house, they become survival challenges. One misplaced step, and suddenly you're skating across cobblestones, questioning how many bones the human foot actually contains and whether you'll miss any of them. But the danger of Regency footwear isn't only structural, it's social. Shoes were status symbols. Soft leather, wealth, embroidery, style, silk, a declaration of reckless confidence because one splash of mud would destroy your dignity and your finances in one slap. Wear the wrong pair of shoes to the wrong event, and people would judge you faster than you can blink. Shoes were tiny billboards announcing, yes, I am fashionable, but also possibly making poor life choices. And because everything in the Regency era comes with emotional stakes, the act of putting on shoes is practically a commitment ceremony. Once they're on, they're staying on. These slippers do not forgive. They do not bend to your will. They cling to your heels like a clingy romantic partner, and getting them off requires finesse and maybe a prayer. Walking becomes a lesson in caution. Step lightly. Roll your foot gently. Do not stomp, jump, lean, twist, or attempt agility. If you drop something, you must gracefully lower yourself, knees bending in slow motion, because squatting quickly will send your foot sliding forward until your toes hit the end of the slipper with the force of a Regency dual pistol. At a ball, the challenge intensifies. Dance steps that look graceful on paper become dangerous battlefield maneuvers in fabric-thin shoes. You glide, yes, but you glide because traction is non-existent. You spin, yes, but only because your slippers encourage rotational chaos. By the third dance, your feet are screaming. Your toes are numb and your arches have filed for emancipation. Of course, men had it no better. Their boots, though sturdier, often fit so tightly they required servants, tools, and occasionally brute emotional resilience to remove. Some boots were so narrow they essentially shrink-wrapped the lower leg, forcing men to walk like highly disciplined penguins. And yet, despite all this pain, something magical happens. As you move in your dainty slippers, feeling the precariousness of every step, you suddenly look graceful, floating, light, vulnerable in that Regency way that signals, I am refined enough to endure discomfort quietly. That was the point. Regency shoes weren't designed for comfort. They were designed for elegance, for posture, for the illusion that you, a fragile human, glide effortlessly through life on soft leather wings, even if inside your feet are drafting their last will and testament. So you take another careful step, hoping the slippers don't fold in half like a defeated taco, and you accept your fate. These shoes may hate your feet, but they love your aesthetic. You smooth a thick, glossy lump of pomade into your hair. It smells like lavender and poor decision-making. You now have beautiful curls and a 50% chance of igniting if you stand too close to a candle. Pomade is the unsung hero and villain of Regency grooming. Once applied, it transforms your unruly hair into a silky wave of elegance, the kind of perfect curl pattern you only achieve today by sacrificing a small part of your soul to a hair tutorial. But unlike modern styling products, Regency pomade is not made of polymers, creams, or anything remotely OSHA approved. No, this miracle paste consists primarily of animal fat, beeswax, essential oils, and optimism. The moment it touches your fingertips, you realize you're dealing with something formidable. It's soft at first, like butter left on a warm counter, but quickly turns sticky, coating your fingers in a sheen so glossy it reflects your regrets. You apply it carefully, smoothing it into your hair with the seriousness of someone handling rare, fragile artifacts. It clings to every strand, weighing them down with a heavy, aromatic loyalty that says, you are beautiful now, but you will suffer to maintain it. And oh, the scent. The lavender is strong, comforting almost, but beneath it lurks a deeper note, the unmistakable hint of rendered tallow. The combination gives you the aura of a romantic figure in a painting, but also someone who may have lightly fried potatoes using their own head. It's charming, in an alarmingly domestic way. The heat, however, is your mortal enemy. Regency homes are full of open flames, candles, hearths, lamps, and your pomaded hair is basically an artisanal wick. As you move about the room, you become hyper-aware of every flickering light source. A candle at the wrong angle becomes a hazard. A fireplace becomes a threat. Even another person leaning in with a lantern becomes an insurance liability. This explains why Regency men often pose dramatically away from the fire. Survival. But let's talk curls. Regency society expects a certain wave, a soft cascade of hair that implies intelligence, good breeding, and a willingness to suffer silently for beauty. Pomade creates the curl, heat sets it, determination maintains it. You twist your hair around heated tongs, essentially metal tubes placed in the fire until they reach the temperature of volcanic glass, and trust that your pomade will protect your strands rather than immediately cook them. Once curled, your hair becomes invincible. Not strong, not healthy, just invincible. The pomade locks everything into place, transforming your coiffure into a sculpture. Your curls can withstand dancing, wind, moisture, heartbreak, and even mild existential dread. Touch them, and they do not move. They simply resist. But this invincibility comes at a price: insects. Pomade, rich in fat and wax, is basically a Regency buffet for the occasional curious bug. If you notice a moth hovering suspiciously near your head, don't panic. It's normal, horrifying, but normal. Let's also acknowledge the laundering nightmare. Pomade does not wash out easily. In fact, it barely washes out at all. Your pillowcase becomes a permanent wax museum. Your collars darken. Your hands remain slightly tacky no matter how vigorously you scrub them. Regency laundry maids deserved medals, compensation, and ongoing therapy. Yet despite these hazards, pomade is essential. Without it, your hair would frizz, flop, or worse, look natural. And natural hair in the Regency era is socially equivalent to arriving at a ball wearing a burlap sack and an expression of defeat. So you continue wearing your pomade with pride. You walk carefully near candles, you angle your head away from open flames, you perfect sweeping gestures that keep people from standing too close. You're a walking artwork with a melting point, and eventually something unimaginable happens. You admire it. You admire the shine, the softness, the romantic curls cascading across your forehead. You look dramatic, poetic, slightly combustible, and entirely Regency. Because in this era, beauty isn't just visual, it's tactile, it's fragrant. It's a calculated gamble with fire safety codes that do not yet exist. And somehow it's worth every glossy, flammable moment. You inhale and realize the air is interesting. Perfume is everywhere, bathing is optional, and laundry is more theory than practice. You now smell like roses, starch, and repressed anxiety. The Regency era is a sensory experience mainly for the nose, and not always in a good way. The first thing you notice is the powerful floral cloud drifting through the room. It's not subtle, it's not gentle. It's the olfactory equivalent of being smothered by a field of aggressively enthusiastic lilies. People aren't wearing perfume sparingly, they're marinating in it. Every individual carries a fragrant aura that announces their arrival several seconds before they physically enter the room. This isn't indulgence, it's survival. Because beneath the pleasant notes lies something far more concerning. Without frequent bathing, the human body takes creative liberties and none of them are fresh. Water isn't just inconvenient, it's suspicious. Cold water is uncomfortable, hot water is expensive, and doctors frequently insist that bathing too often will weaken your constitution, rattle your humours, or possibly make your soul flee the body in protest. So people bathe infrequently, cautiously, and with the anxious energy of someone performing a minor exorcism. Laundry doesn't fare much better. That crisp white shirt you admire in paintings, It has been washed at most a handful of times this season. Soap is harsh, water is scarce, and labour is expensive. Clothes, therefore, develop personalities, complex ones. By week 3, your shirt is not just an outfit, it's a companion. A loyal, mildly haunted companion that smells like stale lavender, starch, and a faint whisper of human despair. What people do wash regularly is their linen underclothes. These serve as barriers between you and every garment you can't afford to clean often. They collect the sweat, oils, and emotional turmoil of daily life, and by laundering them semi-regularly, Regency folks can maintain the illusion of cleanliness. Illusion is important here. Freshness is less about actual hygiene and more about managing expectations. Now pay attention to the starch. Regency society is obsessed with it. Collars, cuffs, cravats, chemises, everything is stiff, crisp, and radiating the faint chemical tang of boiled wheat paste. One whiff, and you feel like you're standing in a bakery that moonlights as a low-budget chemistry lab. Even movement creates scent. Each shift of your clothing releases tiny powdery ghosts of starch into the air. And then there's perspiration. You're wearing several layers. You're under candlelight. You're dancing. You're nervous. Your body is doing what bodies do and your clothing is taking notes. Wool, linen, and muslin absorb everything. Heat, stress, ambition, unresolved emotion. By the end of the evening, you smell like someone who has spent 3 hours trying to politely compete for oxygen in a ballroom packed with 200 people in unventilated attire. Perfume exists to fix this, but perfume in the Regency era was less soft everyday fragrance and more weaponized aroma. Heavy, sweet, cloying scents layered upon one another until the room becomes a potpourri battleground. One person wears rose, another violet, another jasmine, someone else insists on bergamot, and suddenly you are inhaling a floral thunderstorm thick enough to develop its own ecosystem. The result is a peculiar blend. The crisp scent of linen, the powdery smack of starch, the floral punch of perfume, and the lingering undertones of unwashed humanity. And somehow it becomes comforting, familiar, even elegant, in the way only something deeply committed to being unapologetically itself can be. Eventually you stop questioning it. You breathe in the scent of the Regency era and accept that it's equal parts charm and chaos. You smell like a bouquet, a laundry room, and a mild personal crisis all at once. And strangely, you fit right in. You throw on a cloak and instantly it either strangles you or drags behind you like you're preparing to reenact a dramatic opera death. There is no in-between. Cloaks are one of the great deceptions of the Regency era. In portraits they look noble, dramatic capes flowing elegantly behind gentlemen as if caught in a perpetual romantic breeze. But reality is less heroic and more suffocating. The moment the cloak settles onto your shoulders, you can feel gravity and fabric enter into a conspiracy against you. Let's begin at the clasp. A Regency cloak fastens with a small hook, button, or ribbon tied neatly at the throat, neatly, in theory. In practice, the clasp sits directly on the most sensitive part of your neck, ensuring that with every movement, you feel the gentle reminder that you are one poorly timed inhale away from accessorizing yourself into unconsciousness. If you tie it too tightly, you're performing a slow, polite self-strangulation. Too loosely, and the cloak escapes, billowing behind you like a runaway bedsheet. The weight is deceptive too. Cloaks look graceful, but they're made of heavy wool. Real, thick, insulating wool, the kind designed to protect shepherds from windstorms and sheep with boundary issues. This means that when you move, the cloak lags behind you a full second, as if it's thinking deeply about whether it agrees with your decision. Nothing destroys your dignity faster than turning around quickly and being firmly slapped by your own outerwear. Now try walking outside. The wind catches your cloak instantly, turning you into a reluctant kite. Gusts flip the fabric over your head, or worse, wrap it around your legs in a way that makes forward motion complicated and occasionally impossible. Regency pedestrians must master the art of the cloak grab, one hand clutching the fabric dramatically at the shoulder, the other hand trying not to trip over cobblestones. This is why everyone in Regency novels looks so dramatic outdoors. They are not posing, they're trying not to die. Inside, the cloak becomes a different kind of problem. Step into a crowded ballroom or drawing room, and your cloak becomes a sweeping menace, knocking into furniture, catching on banisters, and accidentally brushing against the wrong person in ways that are socially ruinous. By the time you remove it, the cloak has collected dust, stray feathers, and possibly a small child. Removal is a ceremony. You untie the clasp slowly, carefully, praying the knot doesn't tighten under pressure, and slide the cloak off your shoulders. It falls heavily into your arms, a woolen avalanche. A servant takes it from you with the resigned strength of someone who's done this 400 times tonight already. Even resting on a hook, the cloak still looks like it's judging you. But let's address the real danger. Stairs. Cloaks on staircases are that perfect combination of elegance and hazard. The fabric pulls behind you, threatening to snag under your heel or the heel of the person behind you, someone who will then tumble gracefully or not into your back, sending you both into a Regency-themed catastrophe. Navigating steps requires lifting the cloak slightly, gathering wool into your fist like you're preparing for a heartfelt speech on a cliffside. Despite all this chaos, cloaks have undeniable charm. In still moments, when the wind is gentle, the clasp sits just right, and you're standing in golden candlelight, they make you look sophisticated, mysterious, almost heroic. You feel like someone who delivers poetic lines and has meaningful secrets. Cloaks amplify your silhouette, giving you an air of melancholy nobility, as though you are constantly on the verge of departing for a duel or a tragic love confession. And perhaps that's why the cloak survived for so long. Not because it was practical, it isn't. Not because it was warm, though it is. But because it creates a mood. It transforms you from an ordinary person slowly freezing in 1812 London into a figure of cinematic importance, even if you are mostly just trying not to get choked, tripped, or swept off the street like a Regency tumbleweed. In the end, the cloak is a commitment, a lifestyle, a woolen gamble. If you're not careful, it becomes your downfall. If you are careful, it becomes your entrance. You place a bonnet on your head and feel the weight of social expectations, and also several ounces of decorative ribbon. These hats are less accessories and more personal ecosystems. Regency hats do not merely sit atop your head, they occupy it, completely, emotionally, spiritually. When you secure this bonnet under your chin, you're effectively strapping on a portable microclimate, one that includes shade, wind resistance, and a surprising amount of moral judgment. These hats aren't here to complement your outfit. They're here to control your life. Let's talk size. Your bonnet is enormous. It frames your face like you're a rare specimen being preserved for future generations. It juts forward dramatically, projecting several inches beyond your forehead into public space you now own by virtue of millinery intimidation. Your hat enters the room before you do, announcing your arrival like a herald with poor impulse control. The brim is so wide it casts its own eclipse. You suddenly understand why Regency women were always tilting their heads at strange angles. It wasn't coyness, it was self-preservation. This hat narrows your field of vision so severely that you can only see what is directly in front of you, or what reflects off a polished surface. You become a creature of limited sightlines and unlimited fashion. Now consider the decorations. Ribbons, feathers, silk flowers, artificial fruit, lace, possibly a startled taxidermy bird, Your bonnet carries enough embellishments to qualify as light construction. Some bonnets have so many adornments they sway gently in the wind, turning your head into a living centerpiece. You're not merely wearing fashion, you are cultivating it. These hats were meant to convey status. A large bonnet meant wealth. A heavily trimmed bonnet meant taste. A bonnet decorated with so many feathers it resembled a migrating flock meant money mostly. You're announcing to the world that you can afford ribbons imported from France, flowers crafted by skilled artisans, and a structural foundation capable of supporting it all. But with grandeur comes danger. First, wind. The Regency wind is bold, unregulated, and hungry for bonnets. One strong gust and your hat becomes an airborne menace, tumbling across the street with the speed of an ambitious hedgehog. Chasing it requires dignity you do not possess, and catching it requires arms you cannot raise properly, because the bonnet straps are tied tightly enough to affect your blood circulation. Then there's transportation. Try entering a carriage while wearing something the size of a modest family tent. The brim hits the door frame, the decorations snag on the latch. You twist and crouch, performing a low-budget, acrobatic routine, until finally you wedge yourself inside the carriage like a fashionable cork in a very small bottle. Once seated, your bonnet shifts, tipping slightly to one side. This is normal. It is the bonnet's way of saying, you thought you were in charge. Adorable. You adjust it, but it adjusts back. These hats have moods. In conversation, your bonnet becomes participant. When you turn your head, you must rotate your entire torso to avoid hitting someone with the brim. If you nod, the ribbons sway dramatically, signalling agreement with theatrical flair. If you politely decline something, the bonnet casts a shadow that suggests deep, impenetrable disapproval. But the most remarkable thing about these hats is how they transform you. Slip one on and suddenly you feel important, regal, slightly absurd, yes, but in a glamorous way. You carry yourself with more grace because your head is now a fragile architectural masterpiece that requires perfect posture to remain upright. And slowly you begin to understand why Regency women adored these bonnets. They are portable privacy. They shield your face from the sun, strangers, and anyone having an opinion you'd rather not hear. They offer a small personal sanctuary beneath the brim, a shady retreat where you can roll your eyes without being caught. Sure, they're cumbersome and heavy, and occasionally life-threatening in windy conditions, but these hats grant you presence, authority, silhouette. In the Regency era, your hat didn't just complete your outfit, it completed you. You try to sit, you cannot sit. The clothes refuse, your body refuses, the furniture refuses. Everything is stiff and polite and deeply unforgiving. The Regency era is full of illusions, romance, elegance, flowing silks. But the greatest illusion of all is the idea that people simply sat the way we do now. They did not. They positioned themselves, they arranged themselves. They performed the idea of sitting while their clothing attempted to sabotage their internal organs. Begin with the posture. You cannot slouch. You cannot lean. You cannot soften as a modern body longs to. No, the Regency spine is a rigid moral statement. It sits before you sit. Your cravat is tied so tightly it refuses to let your chin drop more than a few respectful millimeters. Your stays or waistcoat hold your midsection like a polite but unyielding corset. Even your hair, stiffened with pomade, seems to whisper, "Stand up straight," or "So help me." Then comes the clothing. Empire waist gowns fall in long, delicate lines that behave beautifully when you're walking and disastrously when you attempt to bend. The skirt folds under you like a collapsing tent, threatening to expose more ankle than society tolerates. Men fare no better. Breeches so tight they creak, coats so structured they resist bending, and shirt ruffles that billow into one's face at the slightest forward tilt. Every layer is determined to maintain its aesthetic, even if your kneecaps disagree. Now look at the furniture. Chairs are high, narrow, delicate, more symbolic than functional. They were designed for posture, not comfort. The backs are unforgiving, the seats shallow, and the upholstery thin enough to remind you that ergonomics has not been invented yet. Sofas do exist, but they are stiff, formal things. They are not for lounging, they are for perching, preferably while saying something witty. With all this in mind, you attempt the Regency sit. First, you approach the chair as though wooing it. You turn, adjust your clothing, then reach behind you to ensure your skirt or coattails do not behave rebelliously. You begin your descent, slowly, carefully, knees bending with caution usually reserved for diffusing bombs. Halfway down, you realize your gown has decided to pool under your feet, actively conspiring to make you fall. You shift your weight, nearly tip over, recover, pretend nothing happened. Smooth. Finally you land gracefully in theory. Realistically, you land with the soft thud of someone trying not to breathe too deeply. Your back remains straight, your elbows delicately placed, your hands resting atop one another in a show of serene elegance. You're sitting, yes, but only by the loosest definition of the word. Staying seated is its own ordeal. If you adjust your weight, your clothing readjusts with suspicion. Your stays press against your ribs. Your breeches remind you circulation is optional. Your cravat insists your chin hover at a self-important angle. After a few minutes, your hips ache, your toes fall asleep, and you begin to question every decision that led you to this moment. Standing back up? Worse. You cannot simply rise. You must push yourself forward with perfect upper body control, tuck your feet beneath you, lift from the core, and emerge like a majestic swan who has never known discomfort. Meanwhile, your legs are numb, your clothing resists movement, and the chair scrapes loudly against the floor like it's tattling. This is why Regency people took so many walks. Standing was freedom, sitting was a performance art. Yet somehow, amidst the discomfort, there is undeniable charm. A room full of people perched on elegant chairs, holding perfect posture, exchanging polite conversation. It creates an aesthetic of poise and restraint so iconic it shaped an entire era's visual identity. And as you finally rise, blood returning to your legs like a hesitant traveller, you realise a simple truth. In the Regency era, sitting wasn't rest, it was reputation. You take a step and realise the gown sways before you do, like it's leading the walk. You're merely a passenger inside your own outfit. The Regency gown is not content to simply exist on your body. It has ambitions, goals, a personality even. Once it's on, the gown develops opinions about movement, airflow, and who is actually in charge here. Spoiler, not you. The Empire waist frees the skirt to start its descent just beneath your ribs, creating a cascade of fabric that behaves with all the predictability of an emotionally unstable ghost. The moment you shift your weight, the gown swoops dramatically, gliding forward like it's auditioning for a role in a play where it is the tragic romantic lead and you are the stage hand. Each step becomes a careful negotiation. You cannot simply stride, you must glide. You must move with a slow, lingering elegance, lest your dress rebel and wrap itself around your ankles with the enthusiasm of a needy cat. Regency gowns love ankles. They seek them out. They cling to them. They introduce you, uninvited, to the feeling of tripping in slow motion. Forward motion requires strategy. You must lift the hem just a touch, delicately, like holding a small bird, revealing exactly the socially acceptable amount of shoe. Too high, and you scandalise the room. Too low, and the dress punishes you by sweeping your feet out from under you. The gown teaches humility. Then there's the swish. With every step, the muslin, silk, or cotton panels whisper against one another, creating a gentle rustling sound that follows you. It's soft, calming, almost soothing until you realize everyone in a ballroom is making the same noise, turning the space into a field of rustling fabric that sounds like 1,000 polite ghosts applauding your indecision. Walking outdoors complicates things further. A breeze appears, nothing dramatic, just a polite gust, and your gown reacts as if possessed. It flares outward, billowing around your legs, turning you into an unwilling human parachute. You try to push it down discreetly, but Regency etiquette dictates you must appear serene while battling your own outfit, and heaven help you if the terrain is uneven. Grass, cobblestones, gravel, each becomes a unique hazard. The gown catches, tugs, and attempts to wrap around obstacles like it's trying to bond emotionally with the ground. Some women in this era developed the Regency shuffle, a small, graceful sliding walk that prevents tripping, but makes you look like you're gliding across a ballroom, as if propelled by spiritual resignation. Indoors, narrow hallways expose another challenge, the gown's spatial awareness, or lack thereof. Even though you know the dimensions of the corridor, the gown refuses to acknowledge them. It brushes the walls, catches on door frames, and occasionally snags on a passing piece of furniture, yanking you backward with the force of a possessive toddler. Dancing. An entirely new sport. A waltz requires you to spin gracefully, while your dress reacts moments later, swirling around you like a delayed emotional response. Sometimes it flies outward beautifully, and other times it swallows your dance partner, leaving both of you trapped in a silky cocoon of mutual embarrassment. But the gown isn't always rebellious. Sometimes, rarely, it complements your movement. It floats behind you like mist, catching the candlelight in soft folds. For a moment, you understand why Regency fashion adored this silhouette. When it behaves, the gown makes you look graceful, dreamy, untouchable. It transforms you from a person into an aesthetic. Still, let's be honest, the gown has its own priorities, its own agenda, its own gravitational pull. You walk where it allows you to walk. You turn when it gives permission. You descend stairs not as a human, but as an entity negotiating with its operatic costume. Eventually you stop fighting it. You surrender to the rhythm of the dress. You learn its moods, the swoop, the cling, the dramatic flourish. And in that surrender, something magical happens. You and the gown move together. Yes, it leads. Yes, it has opinions. But for the first time, you glide, sway, and drift with the confidence of someone who understands that Regency fashion is not worn, it is survived. You gaze into a small, slightly distorted mirror and try to adjust your outfit. This mirror is lying to you. It's tiny, warped, and definitely gaslighting you. Regency mirrors are not tools, they're opinions. They do not reflect truth, they curate it. Staring into one is like consulting a sarcastic oracle who offers only vague, unhelpful hints about your appearance. You lean in, squint, tilt your head, and the mirror quietly whispers, "Oh, you think you look like that?" The first problem is size. Mirrors in this era are shockingly small, about the size of a modern paperback book. You can only see one feature at a time. If you want to check your hair, you lose sight of your cravat. If you want to inspect your waistcoat, your face vanishes entirely. It's like trying to assemble an outfit using clues from a very uncooperative treasure map. Then there's the glass itself. Regency mirrors are not flat. They ripple. They warp. They bend light in ways that would make a physicist weep. Move half an inch to the left and suddenly your forehead elongates like you're a Regency-themed cartoon character. Lean back and your chin disappears into a gentle blur. You're constantly morphing between accurate human and something Picasso might have painted during a fever dream. This creates terrible uncertainty. Are you actually symmetrical? Does your hair curl that way? Is your jawline really shaped like a polite question mark? The mirror refuses to say. It presents a shifting parade of possibilities, each more unhelpful than the last. Lighting does not help. Regency interiors rely on candles, which cast soft, fluttering shadows across your face like you're telling ghost stories at a slumber party you did not agree to attend. The mirror reflects not just you, but the room's general sense of drama. One minute the candlelight makes you look ethereal. The next it reveals every pore you've ever had or will ever have. No warning, no mercy. Trying to adjust your clothing becomes its own adventure. You attempt to fix your cravat, but the mirror shows one angle while your fingers insist on another. You smooth your hair, only for the reflection to imply you've made it worse. You straighten your coat, step back, and realize the mirror is too small to show more than a confused sliver of lapel. You're essentially dressing yourself using partial surveillance footage. And then there is the final insult. Regency mirrors were expensive, painfully expensive. The glass alone required specialized manufacturing, and the frames, often gilded, carved or decorated, added to the cost. So even though these mirrors lie, distort and psychologically manipulate you, you must treat them with reverence. You must admire them, compliment them, stand before them as if in the presence of royalty, even as they quietly erode your self-esteem. Social pressure only makes it worse. A hostess invites you to admire yourself in her new French mirror. You must smile, pretend it flatters you, and conspire with the entire room in the shared delusion that this warped rectangle is the pinnacle of reflective technology. Meanwhile, the mirror is busy making you look tired, slightly crooked, and possibly haunted. Still, despite all this, Regency mirrors have a strange charm. The distortions soften you. They blur flaws. They make you look vaguely romantic, as though you have been seen through the lens of memory rather than reality. You catch glimpses of yourself not as you are, but as a poetic version of yourself, glowing, shadowed, slightly mysterious. The mirror gaslights you, yes, but also flatters you in the theatrical way only early 18th century craftsmanship can. Eventually, you accept the truth. You will never know what you actually look like in this time period. The mirror has chosen your identity for you, and honestly, maybe that's easier. Maybe it's comforting to be interpreted rather than seen. So you give the mirror one last uncertain glance, adjust your outfit based entirely on instinct, and step away, ready to face the world with the confidence of someone who has absolutely no idea what their face is doing. You roll up your stockings, only for them to betray you slowly over the day, slipping down your calves like exhausted caterpillars. Stockings are not merely garments in the Regency era, they are traps. They begin the morning with enthusiasm, gripping your legs with the confidence of loyal companions. But as the hours pass, they grow weary. They lose hope. They surrender. And they begin their slow descent in a way that is both physically inconvenient and emotionally devastating. The first betrayal comes quietly. You feel a subtle loosening around the knee. Nothing alarming, just a gentle reminder that gravity is undefeated. You tug them up, thinking the problem is solved. It is not solved. The stockings were simply gathering strength for their next, more dramatic collapse. These garments are made of silk, wool, or cotton, knitted so tightly they look indestructible until they're asked to perform their one job, staying up. Silk stockings feel divine, soft, smooth, whisper-thin, but they are slippery, rebellious creatures, always dreaming of freedom. Wool stockings are warm but itchy, clinging to your legs with the personality of clingy toddlers. Cotton ones behave for a few hours, and then begin their steady march downward with passive-aggressive determination. And because Regency breeches end just below the knee, Your stockings are held up not by elastic, which tragically doesn't exist yet, but by garters. These delicate bands sit above or below the knee, gripping the stockings in place, at least theoretically. In practice, garters either cut off your circulation so aggressively your foot starts drafting its last will, or they're too loose, allowing the stocking to slip anyway like a badly behaved curtain. The sensation of a falling stocking is unmistakable. First, a slight roll, then a droop, then the dreaded gathering of fabric around your ankle, forming a soft, humiliating puff that says, "You have lost control." You excuse yourself, trying to discreetly yank the stocking upward, but Regency clothing is layered, tight, and deeply unhelpful. You attempt a subtle adjustment and instead draw the attention of the entire room. Meanwhile, the stockings themselves offer no apology. They are quiet, soft, and utterly merciless. Each descent is a reminder that fashion in this era is a constant battle between dignity and physics. Walking becomes treacherous. A slipping stocking shifts your balance just enough to make you step oddly, your heel catching on the edge of the fabric. You perform the famous Regency stutter step, half trip, half recovery, pretending you simply noticed something interesting on the floor. You did not. You noticed your life flashing before your eyes. Dancing is worse. Your stockings inch down with every turn, every bow, every gentle brush of a partner's hand. By the end of a waltz, your knees are fully exposed to the cruel court of public opinion. If someone sees bare skin, the scandal is instantaneous. You become the subject of whispered commentary, and possibly a cautionary poem titled The Knees of Imprudence. But stockings are not only hazards, they are statements. A good pair indicates status. Silk stockings announce wealth. Patterned stockings announce flair. White stockings announce a level of confidence bordering on spiritual delusion, as they attract dirt faster than a toddler attracts chaos. Men spend small fortunes maintaining them, cleaning them, and replacing them, because a run, a tear, or a sag is social death. Still, the stockings continue their quiet sabotage. By evening, they have settled hopelessly around your ankles, forming what can only be described as Regency leg bags. Your calves, once elegantly defined, now resemble two slightly confused pastries, and yet everyone wears them, everyone suffers, everyone understands the silent war being waged between human ambition and knitted fabric. There is solidarity in the struggle. You catch another person subtly pulling up their stocking behind a potted plant, and you nod in unspoken camaraderie. Because in the Regency era, stockings do not simply clothe you, they challenge you. And by surviving them, one slipping, sagging inch at a time, you become part of the long, resilient lineage of fashionable sufferers. You hold your fan delicately and suddenly realize it can be used to flirt, gossip, signal insults, and dramatically faint. It's a Swiss Army knife made of lace. A Regency fan is more than an accessory. It is a communication device, a social weapon, a tiny, fluttering diplomat capable of expressing everything from "I find you intriguing" to "I wish to perish rather than speak to you further." The fan is an art form, one requiring skill, subtlety, and a wrist with the expressive range of a stage actor. Start with the construction. Fans are crafted from lace, silk, paper, and carved wood, all held together by delicate rivets that seem perpetually on the verge of collapse. But once opened, the fan becomes a shimmering half-moon that commands a surprising amount of respect. Its ribs snap into place with a satisfying click, a sound that, in Regency society, is essentially the equivalent of saying, "I'm ready to emotionally devastate someone." Now observe the flutter. The movement must be gentle, rhythmic, and deliberate. Too fast and you look panicked. Too slow and you look bored. Just right and you look elegant, mysterious, and possibly dangerous. A skilled handler can send signals across a ballroom with the precision of a military semaphore operator. A single flick could invite a conversation, dismiss a suitor, or indicate that yes, you heard that gossip, and yes, you will be weaponizing it later. The fan even has its own unspoken language. Hide your mouth behind it. You're whispering secrets, snap it shut. You're annoyed. Drop it. You're either flirting or fainting, possibly both. Tap it on your left cheek. You're engaged. Tap it on your right cheek. You're available. Wave it quickly. You're overwhelmed. Wave it slowly. You're trying to appear calm while internally falling apart. It's astonishing how much social nuance is packed into one small object. Modern smartphones have fewer functions. Then there's the gossiping aspect. A cleverly wielded fan can obscure your face while you lean toward a friend, murmuring about someone else's tragic choice of breeches or scandalously drooping cravat. The fan becomes a shield, a tent, a portable privacy booth. Onlookers see only fluttering lace and assume you're discussing poetry or weather patterns. In reality, you are dissecting last week's disastrous dinner party with forensic intensity. Fans also serve as emotional armour. A quick snap open provides instant plausible deniability. Oh no, I wasn't glaring at Lady Danforth. A speck of dust simply flew into my eye. The fan provides cover for judgment, irritation, boredom, hunger, existential despair, anything you don't wish to display openly. And of course, fainting. The Regency world is full of corsets, humidity, overwhelming perfumes, emotional repression, and moderately toxic pomade fumes. People faint, frequently. The fan becomes your personal emergency ventilation device. When the room grows too warm or the conversation too dull, you flutter the fan rapidly, drawing in air like a tiny decorative life preserver. If fainting becomes inevitable, you hold the fan dramatically to your forehead as you collapse. This is important, gracefully. Walking with a fan is another skill entirely. It must remain slightly open, dangling just so from your wrist, creating an image of serene control. Do not swing it. Do not drop it. Do not accidentally stab someone with the lacquered tip, though this happens often enough that no one remarks upon it anymore. But fans are not merely tools, they are identities. The pattern printed on the leaves, the material, the size, the artwork, every detail announces something about you. A fan painted with pastoral landscapes says you are refined. A fan trimmed with feathers says you crave attention. A fan with glittering embellishments says you came here to commit social homicide. And yet, despite their complexities, fans are delightful. They give you something to do with your hands during awkward pauses. They let you appear calm even when your heart is thrashing like a Regency carriage horse. They transform you into someone elegant, deliberate, effortlessly composed. By the time you finish an evening wielding your fan with subtle authority, you understand its true power. It is not just for cooling yourself or flirting discreetly. It is the Regency equivalent of emotional multitasking. And in your hands, it becomes not just an accessory, but a language. You clasp on a necklace heavy enough to anchor a small boat. Congratulations, fashion now doubles as upper body strength training. Regency jewellery is not subtle. It is not lightweight. It is not delicate, at least not in spirit. Wearing it feels like participating in an elaborate endurance test, created by someone who admired beauty, but also believed the human neck should occasionally suffer. Every piece is stunning, intricate, shimmering under candlelight, and weighs approximately the same as a newborn child. Begin with a necklace. The clasp clicks shut behind your neck, and suddenly your spine becomes acutely aware of gravity. Your shoulders adjust. You stand taller, not from elegance, but because slouching would cause the necklace to swing forward like a wrecking ball aimed directly at your sternum. This jewellery demands posture. It enforces posture. It is posture. The gemstones are heavy, real stones, real metal, nothing hollow or economical. Pearls, garnets, topaz, amethysts. Each one looks like a dazzling treasure and feels like an anchor forged in the fires of Mount Doom. As you move, the necklace shifts with a slow, ominous momentum. You feel it pulling you gently earthward, reminding you that beauty in this era is not earned, it is carried. But necklaces aren't alone in their tyranny. Rings in the Regency era are thick, ornate, and frequently multi-purpose. Some are sentimental, some are symbolic. Many are sharp enough to break skin. You gesture animatedly while telling a story. That's a hazard. You clap. That's a hazard. You accidentally brush your hand near someone's face. That's a lawsuit in waiting. Rings aren't accessories. They're tiny medieval weapons dressed as romance. Bracelets behave similarly. They jangle loudly, clinking against one another like you're wearing a small but determined percussion section. They catch on sleeves. They pinch skin. They remind you, constantly, that your wrists are not free agents. They are hosts to jewellery that demands attention, loyalty, and occasional sacrifice. Earrings, too, are a commitment. Regency designs favour dangling clusters, drops, and hoops heavy enough that you develop a deeper understanding of what your earlobes can endure. With each step, the earrings sway gently, tugging downward like two persistent toddlers hanging off your ears. Turning your head too quickly risks creating enough momentum to slap yourself across the face. Brooches add another layer of danger. Sharpened metal pins pierce fabric with the same energy as a tiny fencing duel. Brooches are beautiful, but they do not forgive mistakes. One wrong angle, and you stab your own chest so quickly that onlookers might assume you're reenacting a tragic opera scene. Despite the hazards, Regency jewellery serves crucial social purposes. It displays wealth, taste, access to imported goods. The larger and heavier the piece, the more impressive it appears. A necklace that could be repurposed as a ship's anchor. That tells people you come from money, possibly old money, possibly money stored in pirate chests. If your jewellery does not threaten to injure someone during an enthusiastic curtsy, is it even worth wearing? And the sparkle. Regency lighting is dim, relying on candles, fireplaces, and moonlight. Jewellery was designed to catch that faint light and amplify it. As you move through a room, your necklace glints like a beacon. Your earrings shimmer like distant stars, and your rings flash like tiny fireworks, warning others of potential danger. But the real transformation happens in the way you carry yourself. Once adorned, you cannot move casually. You glide, you drift. You take careful, deliberate steps because moving too quickly could cause your necklace to swing forward and concuss you. You lift your hands gracefully because your rings could scratch furniture, people, or delicate social alliances. You tilt your head slowly because your earrings are heavy enough to generate centrifugal force. By the end of the evening, your neck aches, your wrists are tired, and your earlobes feel like they've completed a marathon. But you also look magnificent, powerful, slightly dangerous in a very glamorous way. In the Regency era, jewellery isn't just decoration, it's training, it's intimidation, it's survival, worn proudly, painfully, beautifully. You begin fastening yourself into a garment that contains more buttons than a modern factory. By the time you're done, you've aged 6 months and question your life choices. Buttons in the Regency era are not just closures, they're commitments. They're declarations of patience, perseverance, and the quiet endurance of someone who recognises that fashion will slowly take years off their life. A Regency outfit contains so many buttons that you begin to suspect clothing designers were paid by the fastener. Start with the shirt. At first glance, it seems manageable. Only a few buttons, modest, harmless. But then you realise they are tiny, microscopic, sewn on with threads so delicate you fear that even looking at them too hard will cause them to detach. Each buttonhole is narrow, stiff with starch, and resistant to your attempts to coax the button through. Your fingers tremble. Your breathing becomes shallow. You have now begun the Regency morning with a battle of wills against a piece of cloth. Then comes the waistcoat, a garment that contains enough buttons to qualify as a small collection. Rows of them, evenly spaced, all essential. You fasten the first few with hopeful energy, but by button 12 your enthusiasm has evaporated. Sweat beads at your temple. You mutter to yourself. You question how many mistakes you made in life that led you to voluntarily embrace this button-based nightmare. But you cannot stop. Regency clothing is unforgiving. A half-buttoned waistcoat is a sartorial war crime. You must finish, even as your hands ache, even as your patience dissolves like sugar in tea. By the final button, you feel a sense of accomplishment akin to summiting a small emotional mountain, and yet more buttons await. Your coat enters the scene with the smug confidence of a garment that knows it has the power to ruin your evening. Double-breasted coats require not only external buttons, but often internal support buttons as well. Fastening them is an exercise in spatial reasoning, geometry, and faith. You cross the left panel over the right, insert the anchor button into a hidden interior slit, and begin the outer fastening. It is a puzzle. A confusing, chaotic puzzle designed to humble anyone who believes they are intelligent. Women fare no better. Their gowns, though flowing and elegant, often button at the back, where no human arm can comfortably reach. You stand before a mirror, twisting like a contortionist, attempting to blindly guide buttons into buttonholes, while the dress shifts, rustles, and actively resists cooperation. Eventually you give up and enlist help. Regency dressing is a team sport. Why so many buttons? Why torment generations with laborious fastening rituals? The answer lies partly in aesthetics. Buttons were fashionable, decorative, and often crafted from ivory, silver, shell, glass, or enamel. A well-placed row of buttons signalled wealth and refinement. They served as tiny jewellery pieces, performing double duty as function and flair. But the real reason is structural. Clothing of this era lacks zippers, elastic, velcro, or, well, anything convenient. Buttons are what shape the garment to your body. They cinch, smooth, hold, support and sculpt. Without buttons, Regency outfits would collapse into formless heaps of fabric. With buttons, they become architectural masterpieces, stiff, flattering and impossible to escape quickly. This leads to another problem. What happens when nature calls? Removing 40-plus buttons while in a hurry is a spiritual trial no person deserves. You begin unfastening with frantic energy, only to realise you're still on the outer layers. Your shirt is mocking you from beneath. Time slows. Your life flashes before your eyes. When you finally free yourself, you vow never to drink tea again until the next cup is offered. And yet when all the buttons are finally secured, when each tiny fastener has been conquered, something magical happens. You stand straighter. You look put together. You feel composed. The garment hugs your frame with structured elegance, giving you the silhouette of someone who absolutely has their life together, even if it took an hour of wrestling with buttons to achieve it. In the Regency era, buttons aren't just closures, they're personality tests. And once you've survived them, you understand why everyone walked with such calm dignity. They were too exhausted to do anything else. You lace into your stays and instantly feel hugged by a firm, unyielding, judgmental ghost. Breathing becomes a luxury, not a right. Stays are not corsets, not in the Victorian wasp waist. internal organ rebellion sense. Regency stays are gentler theoretically. They don't sculpt you into an hourglass or squeeze until your ribs reconsider their placement. Instead, they offer a long, tapered shape designed to create the elegant, classical silhouette of ancient statues, straight-backed, lifted, serene. Except, of course, none of this feels serene while you're lacing them. The moment the laces tighten, your torso transforms, your shoulders straighten, your spine aligns with the determination of an overachieving soldier. Your ribcage elevates, your chest lifts, and your waist smooths into a column. You suddenly understand why Regency women move with slow, ethereal grace. They physically cannot move quickly without risking their stays loudly announcing their presence. The material is stiff linen reinforced with whalebone or cording. It warms against your body, giving the unsettling impression that your torso is being slowly adopted by an antique wooden instrument. The front busk, a long, flat piece of wood tucked into a pocket at centre front, keeps everything straight, acting as both posture support and moral compass. It ensures your body maintains the socially approved alignment, elegant, upright, slightly superior to everyone else. Breathing becomes interesting. You technically can breathe, but only in gentle, polite sips of air. Deep breaths no longer accessible unless you plan to slowly unscrew yourself from your stays like a bottle cap. Emotional reactions also change. A gasp becomes a soft wheeze. Laughter becomes a delicate tremor. Crying becomes impossible. You simply cannot expand your diaphragm far enough to properly sob. And then there's the psychological component. Stays feel aware. They have opinions about your posture, your behaviour, your life choices. Slouch even slightly, and the stiff boning presses back, nudging you upright like a schoolmistress who doesn't tolerate nonsense. Bend too far, and the busk reminds you sharply that bending is not historically accurate. Now try sitting, slowly, carefully. Stays demand an immaculate descent. You cannot flop into a chair. You must lower yourself with the grace of someone lowering a priceless artifact. The rigid front panel keeps your torso straight, while the boning prevents your waist from folding improperly. You sit not with your spine, but with your entire soul. Moving in stays requires strategy. Your arms move freely, but your torso is encased in a gentle architectural blueprint that dictates your range of motion. You walk in smooth, restrained steps, less from elegance, more because your breathing capacity has been reduced to fern in mild breeze. Cooking in stays? Impossible. Bending over? Forbidden. Picking something up from the floor? A detailed negotiation between you and physics. You do not lean, you hinge. You do not twist, you swivel. You do not crouch, you lower yourself with full ceremonial intent. And yet despite all this restriction, stays provide something surprising. Support. You feel held together, lifted, organised. Your posture becomes enviable. Your silhouette becomes refined. Your back stops slumping. Your clothing hangs beautifully. You suddenly understand why so many people voluntarily wore these structured garments for centuries. They create order in a world that rarely provides it. There's also an unexpected comfort once you surrender to them. The pressure becomes familiar. The straightness becomes grounding. The restraint becomes soothing, like being gently reminded that no, you cannot explode emotionally at this moment. Your stays will not permit it. By the end of the day, when the laces finally loosen and your ribcage expands with the dramatic enthusiasm of a freed prisoner, you feel both relief and loss. Without stays, you feel wobbly, unsupported, slightly too human. You stand for a moment, hands on your hips, adjusting to the shocking sensation of unrestrained breathing. And you realise something Regency women knew all along. Stays aren't just garments. They're discipline, they're structure, They're a soft, stern embrace telling you to hold yourself together, literally and figuratively. And somehow you miss them the moment they're gone. You don a pelisse, a coat so fashionable and so useless, it may as well be decorative wallpaper. It warms exactly none of you. A pelisse is the Regency answer to the eternal question. What if we created a coat that looks spectacular, but offers the thermal protection of a slightly enthusiastic scarf? The moment it settles on your shoulders, you can feel that this garment has no intention of helping you survive winter. It is here for aesthetics. It is here for drama. It is here to whisper, "I'm gorgeous, darling. Don't ask me to do labour." Pelisses came in many styles, but all shared one core principle: beauty before warmth. Made of silk, velvet, satin, and occasionally very thin wool, they drape elegantly around the body, hugging you just enough to suggest comfort while delivering none. Your arms glide into sleeves lined with luxurious fabrics that feel wonderful until the wind hits. Then the pelisse transforms into a cold, decorative sheath that laughs quietly as your teeth begin to chatter. Some pelisses feature fur trim, usually around the collar or cuffs. Theoretically, this should help. Theoretically. In practice, the fur is placed in the least helpful location possible, warming the 2 inches of your body that were already fine. The rest of you remains exposed to the elements, shivering politely, while wrapped in a garment that seems custom designed to sabotage your survival. The length is another misleading delight. A pelisse might sweep dramatically behind you, trailing in a way that makes you look elegant and ethereal, but length does not equal warmth. It just means there is more fabric acting as a fashionable wind tunnel. When a breeze blows, the pelisse flutters, sways, and lifts like it's trying to ascend into heaven, revealing your ankles, your calves, and the entirety of your vulnerability. Despite its uselessness outdoors, the pelisse thrives indoors. The moment you step into a ballroom or parlour, women glance at your coat with admiration. They compliment the trimming, the embroidery, the drape of the fabric. You nod, pretending not to be frozen stiff beneath it. Removing it becomes a ceremonial act. You unfasten the clasp and slide the pelisse from your shoulders, with the same finesse as a magician revealing a dove. But the coat is not done inconveniencing you. Once removed, the pelisse becomes its own entity. It must be stored carefully, draped gently over an arm or handed to a servant who will treat it like royalty. A single wrinkle is a catastrophe. A tear is a tragedy. A misplaced splash of wine is grounds for exile. And yet, despite its thermal incompetence, the pelisse persists. Why? Because it transforms your silhouette into something cinematic. With its high empire waist and sweeping lines, it creates the illusion that you drift rather than walk. When the light hits the fabric, it gleams softly, adding mystery and quiet glamour to your presence. You look like someone who experiences mild emotions beneath candlelight and owns at least one secret. Of course, the pelisse also restricts movement. Raising your arms becomes an event. Bending becomes a stunt. Reaching for something across the room turns into a slow-motion performance, punctuated by fabric struggling against ambition. Sitting in it feels like sharing a chair with an opinionated curtain. Still, the pelisse is beloved. It completes the Regency silhouette. It adds sophistication. It whispers, "I am delicate, refined, and absolutely unfit for cold weather." Eventually you adapt. You wear heavier shawls beneath it. You plan routes based on fireplaces. You stand near tall people who block the wind. And you accept the truth. The pelisse is not a coat. It's an accessory pretending to be a coat. And in the Regency world, where fashion triumphs over practicality and suffering gracefully is practically a sport, that is exactly the point. You stand in a packed ballroom wearing 19 layers, pretending you feel light, cool, and demure. Meanwhile, your body is melting like butter on a summer windowsill. Ballrooms in the Regency era operate under one guiding principle: everyone looks elegant, and no one acknowledges the suffering happening beneath the clothing. You're surrounded by candles, hundreds of them, each burning with a heat output comparable to a small sun. Add to that the crush of bodies, the lack of meaningful ventilation, and the weight of garments that could double as the household insulation, and you have created the perfect environment for glamorous, socially mandated perspiration denial. The moment you enter the room, the temperature rises at least 10 degrees. You feel it immediately. The slow trickle of heat building beneath your stays, the slight stickiness forming at your hairline, the subtle pooling of warmth beneath your arms. A rational person would remove a layer, open a window, or step outside. You're not allowed to do any of those things. Instead, you must pretend you're a delicate, temperature-neutral portrait come to life. Your face is the first battlefield. Tiny beads of sweat threaten to glisten across your forehead. You dab discreetly with a handkerchief, careful not to disturb your hair pomade, which is simultaneously melting and hardening like a candle with trust issues. The goal is to maintain the illusion of glowing, not sweating. Sweating is uncouth. Glowing is poetic. The line between them is one bead of moisture away from disaster. Your clothing does not help. The layers trap heat with remarkable efficiency. Your chemise, stays, petticoats, gown, stockings, gloves, and shoes form a personal sauna that travels with you. Your body is desperately trying to cool itself, while society is desperately trying to prevent you from admitting it. You smile serenely, imagining cold breezes, ice water, or at least the concept of shade. Then the dancing begins. Dancing is mandatory. Declining a dance raises questions. Accepting a dance raises your internal temperature to levels that would concern a physician. You glide across the floor performing elegant steps while your heart pounds like a blacksmith at work, and your lungs negotiate politely with your stays. Every movement sends a wave of heat rolling through your body like a tropical storm dressed in chiffon. Your partner is sweating too. You can feel it radiating from him in gentle, polite waves. His cravat is slowly loosening. His collar is damp. He is pretending everything is fine. You're pretending everything is fine. Together you form a graceful duet of mutual overheating and mutual denial. The worst part is the social etiquette. You cannot fan yourself too vigorously. Desperation is unattractive. You cannot gasp for air. Dramatic breaths are reserved for emotional revelations and fainting spells. You cannot complain. Complaints are for peasants and the French. Instead, you master subtlety. A gentle flick of the wrist. A tiny lift of the chin to catch a non-existent breeze. A small repositioning toward a slightly cooler portion of the room, by which you mean slightly less hellish. But even with perfect technique, the sweat continues. Your gloves become humid greenhouses for your hands. Your stockings feel increasingly swamp-adjacent. Your bodice traps heat with the smug efficiency of a cast-iron pot. If someone were to touch your arm right now, they would recoil in mild horror, certain they had encountered some sort of damp Regency ghost. Still, you persevere. Because that is the art of Regency ballroom etiquette, to endure unimaginable levels of discomfort with the outward appearance of serenity, to radiate refinement while your body attempts to evaporate. And then, just as you think you cannot survive another moment, the music pauses. Guests wander off to refresh themselves with warm punch and tepid conversation. You take a deep breath, shallow, dignified, and feel the faintest hint of relief. You didn't faint, you didn't melt. You didn't disgrace yourself. You suffered beautifully, and in the Regency era that counts as a triumph. You hold your handkerchief like everyone else, daintily pretending it's for elegance while secretly praying it will save you from sweat, tears, or an inconvenient emotional collapse. A Regency handkerchief is small, delicate. embroidered within an inch of its life, and expected to fulfill more social responsibilities than most government officials. The moment you pick it up, you realize this tiny square of fabric is not here for decoration, it is here for survival, and you will rely on it more than you rely on your own optimism. First, let's address its design. Handkerchiefs in this era are so meticulously stitched, you'd think they were fragile heirlooms meant to be displayed behind glass. Lace borders, tiny monograms, floral embroidery so intricate it looks like it was sewn by fairies who had nothing better to do. You bring it near your face with reverence, not because it's delicate, but because losing it would be a social catastrophe. People judge you on your handkerchief the way modern society judges phone cases, but despite its beauty, the handkerchief works harder than any other accessory. Sweating in a ballroom? Dab discreetly. Tears threatening to betray your composure? Dap delicately. No starting to run because the perfume cloud inside the room has triggered every allergy you've been hiding since birth. The handkerchief becomes your loyal, silent parachute. You may be wearing stays, gloves, stockings, and 20 layers of fabric designed to ruin your day, yet the handkerchief is the only thing holding your dignity together. It also acts as a social tool. Drop your handkerchief and you have initiated a Regency meet cute. A gentleman must rush forward, retrieve it, bow, and return it with a flourish. Is this flirting? Possibly. Is it a trap? Absolutely. If you drop it in front of the wrong person, you accidentally propose marriage, or, worse, court tedious conversation. But the real terror? Dropping it by accident. You bend gracefully, because every Regency movement must be graceful, to retrieve it, praying no one witness the escape attempt. You cannot simply snatch it. You must lower yourself, balancing your gown, your posture, your dignity, and your respiratory limitations. Pick up the handkerchief gently and rise like a resurrected swan. Then there's the smell factor. Handkerchiefs double as olfactory shields. Regency cities are aromatic. Between horse traffic, questionable sanitation, and people avoiding full baths like the plague, occasionally because there is plague, your handkerchief becomes your personal oxygen filter. Many carry scents, lavender, rosewater, bergamot, allowing you to survive urban strolls with your nose and sanity intact. And because it absorbs every emotion you experience in public, it must be washed constantly. But washing delicate lace is an ordeal. You hand it to a laundress, who regards it with the weary respect one reserves for cursed artifacts. She will soak it, scrub it, starch it, dry it, iron it, and return it to you looking immaculate, until you take it to a ball and immediately sweat on it again. Handkerchiefs are also weapons of etiquette warfare. An offended lady may snap hers open sharply, signalling disapproval. A nervous gentleman may wring his like a damp towel, revealing his inner turmoil. A strategic flutter of the handkerchief can end a conversation without words. "I must go," it says softly. "You bore me." But perhaps the handkerchief's greatest challenge is emotional stability. Balls are hot. Dance partners are unpredictable. Social interactions are tense. The handkerchief witnesses every ounce of your psychological unravelling. It absorbs stress, embarrassment, longing, frustration, excitement, and the occasional unexpected sneeze. It is, essentially, a tiny therapist without the license. By the end of the evening, as you stand outside the ballroom, your handkerchief limp and exhausted from duty, you realise it has been your only reliable ally. It didn't judge your sweating. It didn't question your faltering posture. It didn't reveal your secrets. It simply helped you survive. Because in the Regency era, fashion may fail you. Your footwear, your stays, your hair pomade, they all come with consequences. But the handkerchief, it will always be there, quiet, loyal, heavily burdened. The most overworked cloth in Europe. You button your waistcoat and understand that Regency layering operates on the principle of more. Always more. A waistcoat in the Regency era is not just a garment, it is a philosophy, a worldview, a fabric manifesto that says, your torso should never be trusted with only one layer of clothing. Slip it on, and suddenly your outfit transforms from respectable to this person definitely owns land, or at least pretends to. Waistcoats come in endless varieties: silk jacquard, embroidered satin, crisp cotton, finely woven wool, and all of them insist on occupying the exact centre of everyone's visual attention. The designs range from subtle florals to patterns so loud they could legally be classified as auditory experiences. You're not merely wearing clothes anymore, you're wearing an emotional statement piece. The moment it settles against your shirt, you feel the intent of the garment. It cinches gently at the waist, sometimes not so gently, creating a sculpted shape meant to suggest discipline, prosperity, and the ability to withstand mild discomfort for the sake of fashion. The buttons gleam, each one announcing, this outfit was expensive, and the person inside it has opinions. And speaking of buttons, the waistcoat contains a suspicious number of them. Some waistcoats have 10, some have 12. Some have so many that fastening them feels like completing a long emotional journey. Each button reminds you that dressing elegantly is not a task, it is an endurance sport. Once buttoned, the waistcoat traps a perfect pocket of heat between your shirt and your coat. The Regency philosophy is simple: the more layers you wear, the more respectable you appear. Comfort is optional. Ventilation is a myth. You begin to glow, not radiantly, but thermally, like a human stovetop hidden beneath embroidered silk. Now observe how the waistcoat dictates your posture. Slouching becomes impossible. The garment pulls you upright, encouraging a noble spine and discouraging any hint of relaxed humanity. You stand straighter. You move slower. You begin to speak in longer sentences. The waistcoat transforms you into someone who would absolutely write letters sealed with wax and unnecessarily dramatic emotion. But the waistcoat is not all tyranny. It offers pockets, small, beautiful, entirely impractical pockets. They can hold exactly one item, either a watch, a sentimental trinket, or a crisis. Anything larger must be carried elsewhere. Still, slipping something into a waistcoat pocket feels undeniably suave, even if it's just a slightly crushed handkerchief. Socially, the waistcoat's essential. It reveals wealth, taste, and sometimes questionable colour coordination. A brightly patterned waistcoat signals flamboyance. A plain one signals subtlety. A poorly chosen waistcoat signals that you dressed in the dark or have given up entirely. People judge you swiftly, thoroughly, and silently. At balls, the waistcoat performs beautifully. Candlelight glints off its embroidery, creating a warm shimmer that makes your torso appear far more composed than your overheated body feels. As you dance, the garment moves with a certain stoic dignity, even as your lungs beg for more oxygen than your stays or cravat will allow. But the waistcoat has a mischievous side. If you button it too tightly, it restricts your breathing. If you leave it too loose, society frowns. If you choose a fabric too thick, you sweat. If you choose one too thin, you freeze. The waistcoat thrives on balance and punishes those who break its rules. The most treacherous moment arrives after dinner. You're full, layered, and desperately wishing for elastic to be invented. The waistcoat, however, remains unbothered. It holds firm. It reminds you with every shallow inhale that elegance requires suffering. Yet despite its demands, the waistcoat is beloved. It adds dimension, character, and a sense of ceremony to your outfit. It makes you feel important, refined, ready to make announcements or deliver dramatic revelations in candlelit rooms. And when you finally remove it at night, your torso sighing with gratitude. you understand the truth. Regency folks didn't wear waistcoats because they needed extra layers. They wore them because fashion is commitment, and the waistcoat is the contract. You shrug into your tailcoat and immediately wonder how anyone gets through a doorframe in this thing. It fits beautifully, mostly because it's controlling your movements like a puppeteer. A Regency tailcoat is less a garment, and more a structured agreement between you and fabric. The moment it settles over your shoulders, you feel its expectations, its authority, its dominance. You stand taller, not by choice, but because the tailcoat simply will not tolerate slouching. Its stiff interlining presses gently but firmly against your torso, whispering, "Stand up straight." You are representing the empire. Tailcoats are marvels of engineering. The front is cut high, swooping away from your waist in a dramatic curve that says, "Look upon my vest." It is glorious. The back flares into two distinct tails, long, crisp, and capable of initiating minor catastrophes if you turn too quickly. These tails have lives of their own. You might think you're walking, but the tails disagree. They swish with theatrical flourish, announcing your presence with the confidence of a man born entirely in profile. But this coat has demands. The sleeves are cut with such narrow precision that bending your elbows feels like petitioning Parliament for permission. Reaching too high? Not possible. The coat forbids it. Reaching behind you? Laughable. Attempting to retrieve something from the floor? You must choose dignity or the object. You cannot have both. The real challenge begins with movement. Walking becomes a performance. Long strides are forbidden, lest the coat pull across your shoulders like a disciplinary schoolmaster. You must take measured, elegant steps, gliding forward while imagining your spine is made of candle wax, gently warmed but never melting. Turning corners transforms into a moment of suspense, because each tail must independently interpret the direction change. One of them always lags behind, threatening to sweep a candle, a teacup, or an unsuspecting footman directly into oblivion. Doorways are another matter entirely. You approach, hopeful, then angle your torso, attempt a sideways glide, and pray the tails don't catch on the latch. They often do. Tailcoats believe door frames are personal challenges. Navigating a narrow entrance becomes a dock worker level maneuver. Pivot, shift, adjust, and offer up a quiet prayer to whatever deity oversees men's formal wear disasters. Then they're sitting. Regency tailcoats are not designed for sitting. They resist it with righteous indignation. The moment you lower yourself, the tails attempt to slide beneath you like mischievous fabric snakes. If you don't gather them properly, you will sit on them, wrinkle them, or, worst of all, pin yourself to the chair in a way that prevents standing without performing an awkward, mortifying wiggle. And because the coat is cut so fitted across the chest and shoulders, sitting upright becomes mandatory. Your torso remains bolt straight. Your elbows hover politely, and your lungs negotiate for space with the coat's architecture. You do not relax. You perch. All this suffering, yet the tailcoat remains glorious. Its lines enhance your figure, creating an inverted triangle that makes you look powerful, refined, noble. Even if your feet hurt, your breeches are plotting mutiny, and your cravat is squeezing your soul, the coat gives you authority, mystery, the silhouette of a man who could at any moment make a dramatic proclamation. And the fabric. Oh, the fabric. Fine wool, luxurious velvet, satin facings, piping, embroidery. When candlelight hits the coat just right, it gleams with a quiet, irresistible elegance. Tailcoats are walking art installations. Painful, restrictive, occasionally dangerous, but breathtaking. Of course, the coat must be handled with care. Removing it is a two-person job requiring trust, coordination, and upper body strength. A friend tugs gently at the shoulders while you wriggle like someone trying to escape an overly affectionate python. When it finally comes off, you exhale with the relief of a prisoner being released on good behaviour. But here's the truth. For all its limitations, the tailcoat makes you feel magnificent. You become taller, calmer, more dramatic. You move with purpose. You bow with grandeur. You turn your head with the soft authority of someone who knows their silhouette is perfect. Because in the Regency era, the tailcoat doesn't just dress you, it commands you. And to your surprise, you obey. You finally step outside in full Regency attire, and the breeze hits you just right. You look elegant, absurd, restricted, dazzling, and slightly unwell. Welcome to Regency chic. This is the moment, your grand debut in a world where clothing dictates everything from your posture to your probability of surviving a staircase. The second you inhale the morning air, you understand a fundamental truth of the Regency era. Your outfit is no longer something you wear. It is something that happens to you. You stride forward, or rather you attempt to. Every piece of your ensemble begins contributing unsolicited feedback. The tailcoat stiffens your shoulders. The stays manage your ribcage like an overprotective nanny, and your stockings have already started plotting a slow descent. Your shoes whisper threats directly into your arches, and your cravat, tied with the precision of a man trying to secure peace in Europe, restricts your neck movement to a dignified swivel. You take another step. Your gown sways with theatrical flourish, as if greeting the day on your behalf. If you're wearing breeches, they remind you instantly that movement must be small, controlled, and reflective of someone acutely aware of seam tension. Every part of your outfit has opinions about the way you should exist. People pass by and admire you, but not in a gentle, modern sense. They assess you. They inspect the drape of your pelisse, the crispness of your collar, the exact mathematical placement of your buttons. You're not simply outside, you're being graded. You smile politely, pretending not to feel the sweat forming beneath your waistcoat. Then the breeze picks up. Your bonnet tries to escape. Your coattails flare dramatically in a manner that suggests you're either about to duel or deliver a profound announcement. Your hair pomade begins to reconsider its structural integrity, and the gentle scent of rosewater, starch, and collective human suffering swirls around you. Suddenly you understand why people of this era glide instead of walk. Quick movement threatens to unravel the entire architectural masterpiece of your outfit. A brisk stride could snap a garter, pop a button, flip your cloak, or send your fan skittering down the street like an escaping woodland creature. So you adapt, you slow down, you float, and strangely you look incredible doing it. Regency clothing forces a kind of elegance out of you. You can't slouch, not without provoking your stays, your coat, your cravat, and the judgment of passing matrons. You can't stomp or fidget or flail. Your entire body is gently coerced into refinement. Even your breathing becomes artistic. But beneath that elegance lies a deep, quiet suffering. Your feet hurt. Your ribs ache. Your neck is negotiating for freedom. Your jewellery is slowly bruising your collarbones, and you realise with dawning clarity that every Regency painting showing serene, graceful figures is lying. They are not serene. They are surviving. As you continue walking, the layers warm you like a portable oven. The sunlight reflects off your polished buttons, threatening to blind someone. You catch your reflection in a shop window and barely recognise yourself. You look noble, ethereal, slightly possessed by the spirit of an overly strict tailor, and then it hits you. Fashion is no longer a choice. It is your entire personality now. Your day will be dictated by the physics of your outfit. How far you can walk, how deeply you can breathe, how much you can bend, whether or not you can sit, whether your stockings are staging a rebellion. Whether your hair is about to ignite, you've surrendered to the aesthetic, and somehow you love it. Because for all the discomfort, the impracticality, the constant threat of physical and emotional collapse, there is something magical about Regency fashion. It transforms the mundane act of stepping outside into an event, a mood, a drama. You are elegant, you're absurd, you're restricted, you're radiant. You are, quite definitively, Regency chic. You pick up your Regency reticule, a purse so small it can barely hold a single thought, and immediately realise why women constantly dropped things. These tiny silk pouches were fashionable, yes, but functional, absolutely not. You can fit a handkerchief, a coin, and maybe one secret, but that's it. Congratulations, you now own the least practical bag in history. A reticule is a marvel of design in the same way a decorative teacup is a marvel of hydration technology, beautiful, delicate, and entirely uninterested in being useful. From the moment the drawstring slides between your fingers, you understand that this bag is here to accessorize your outfit, not your life. Let's begin with capacity. Your reticule is roughly the size of a balled-up pair of socks. It cannot hold anything of substance. Not a comb, not a glove, certainly not the emotional weight of existing in the Regency era. You try slipping in a second coin, and immediately feel the bag strain like a stressed silk balloon. Anything heavier than a thimble threatens to tear through the fragile fabric, sending your belongings spilling to the floor like confetti celebrating your poor planning. Inside the reticule, the lining is soft and feminine, stitched with care as if whispering, "I was made by someone who never intended you to live a practical life." The opening is narrow, so narrow in fact that removing anything becomes a performance. You tug the drawstring, you widen the fabric, you reach in, you graze your handkerchief, you attempt to extract it. It resists. The reticule tightens. The drawstring snaps back like a snarky serpent. By the time you retrieve your item, 3 minutes have passed and you've forgotten why you needed it. Then there's the matter of carrying it. The reticule dangles from your wrist or finger, swinging freely with every step. It has no weight of its own, so even the slightest movement sends it dancing wildly like a miniature maypole. You try to walk with dignity, but your reticule insists on flapping against your hip, tangling with your gown, or worse, slipping through your gloved fingers entirely. This is why Regency novels are filled with dropped reticules. They weren't plot devices, they were historical inevitabilities. Retrieving the reticule after dropping it is an ordeal. You must bend with ladylike restraint, gather your skirt, keep your posture impeccable, and avoid stepping on your own hem, all while the reticule rolls just out of reach with the determination of a tiny silken troublemaker. Servants rush in to assist, but even they handle the bag with exaggerated delicacy, as though afraid it will disintegrate upon contact. The reticule's uselessness is matched only by its importance. It is the ultimate status symbol. Its fabric speaks volumes. Silk conveys elegance, velvet conveys wealth, embroidery conveys patience, and beadwork conveys that you live a life free of practical concerns. A plain reticule says, "I'm sensible." A fancy reticule says, "I don't expect to carry anything heavier than social expectations." And the social expectations are endless. A lady must always have her reticule. To appear in public without one would imply you're reckless, unprepared, or, heaven forbid, attempting to use your actual pockets. Pockets, of course, are forbidden. Pockets would enable freedom, and freedom is simply too much liberty, so the reticule becomes a constant companion. At balls, it hangs from your wrist while you dance, flapping like a tiny confused bird. At dinners, it rests in your lap, threatening to tumble into your soup. On walks, it taps against your hip with every step like a small judgmental pendulum. Despite all this, the reticule holds a strange charm. It feels dainty, feminine, secretive, a tiny vessel for tiny treasures. Inside it, you carry the bare minimum you need to survive the evening. A coin for emergencies, a handkerchief for sweating and scandal, and perhaps a folded note containing a flirtatious message. And maybe that's the point. The reticule isn't about practicality. It's about aesthetics, mystery, softness, the art of existing with as little baggage, literal or emotional, as possible. So you tie the drawstring, secure it to your wrist, and step into the world knowing that your reticule will help in exactly 0 emergencies, but you will look exquisite while failing. You unfurl your delicate parasol, which offers absolutely no protection from rain, wind, or existential dread. But in Regency society, it's the ultimate symbol of gentle respectability. Holding it correctly requires poise, training, and at least 3 hours of pretending your wrist doesn't hurt. The parasol is a marvel of Regency logic, an object designed not to help, not to shield, not even to function, but to communicate. Parasols whisper, "I am refined, I am delicate, and occasionally I am seconds away from dropping this on a small child." Its canopy of silk or fine cotton provides the same amount of shade as a very polite leaf. Still, its presence elevates your entire persona. You're no longer a person walking outdoors. You're a figure in a painting drifting through sunlight with artistic purpose. The first thing you realize is how fragile it feels. The handle is slender, carved from bone or wood, and polished to a shine that provides exactly no traction. The ribs of the parasol are so thin you suspect a firm exhale could bend them permanently. The silk covering is exquisite, embroidered, scalloped, perhaps even beaded, but also thin enough that if you sneeze in its general direction, it may achieve transparency. Yet this flimsy creation holds immense social power. To carry a parasol is to declare that you take sunlight seriously, not in the protect your skin way, but in the stay pale to signal that you do not labour outdoors or anywhere else really way. The parasol's tiny shade patches your face just enough to protect you from tanning, and just little enough to remind you that this was never meant to be practical. Holding a parasol is its own performance. Your wrist must hover delicately beneath it, lifted just so. Too low and you look tired. Too high and you look like you're trying to signal ships. The angle is crucial, tilted enough to seem flattering, but not so tilted that you accidentally jab a passing gentleman in the eye with a ferrule. Walking with it becomes a mini choreography. Each step must coordinate with the parasol's slight bob, creating a rhythm that is both elegant and deeply inconvenient. The slightest gust of wind turns your parasol into a rebellious paper lantern, tugging you sideways, folding itself inside out, or catching air like a stubborn kite. You clutch it fiercely, desperately pretending everything is graceful. Then there's the social defense function. The parasol is a barrier, soft, flowery armor protecting you from people you'd rather avoid. Someone unpleasant approaches, lean the parasol just slightly toward them. This creates a polite obstacle, a gentle message, a floral shield of no thank you. Simultaneously, it provides cover for your face, allowing you to make whatever expression you need to without being caught by society's ever-watchful eyes. Its utility extends to conversation too. You can tap the tip of your parasol against the ground to punctuate a point, to display irritation, or to signal that you're ready to move on. A slow twirl of the handle conveys idle thoughtfulness. A rapid twirl conveys that you're annoyed, bored, or perhaps dangerously overheated beneath your pelisse. Despite its fragility, the parasol becomes a kind of psychological comfort object. It gives your hand a task. It creates a subtle boundary between you and the chaotic, dusty world. It adds movement to your silhouette, fluttering gently like a decorative companion. You feel slightly safer with it, like you've brought an accessory capable of defending your honour, not through violence, but through vigorous, passive-aggressive shading. But after half an hour, the wrist pain sets in. You switch hands, hoping no one notices. They do. Switching hands is a faux pas. A true lady must appear as though her parasol floats effortlessly, powered by grace alone. You return it to your cramped wrist, resigning yourself to the ache of beauty. And yet as you walk beneath your feeble dome of embroidered silk, you begin to appreciate it. Not because it protects you, it doesn't. Not because it's practical, it absolutely isn't. But because it transforms your presence. It adds softness, elegance, a touch of delicate theatricality. The parasol isn't here to shield you from the world, it's here to announce that you belong to it. You stand before your tailor, a man whose scissors hold more power over your social life than the monarchy. If he cuts your coat well, you're the talk of the ton. If he gets it wrong, even by an inch, you'll look like a wilted radish wrapped in wool. Couture is war, and your tailor is either your general or your greatest enemy. This is not a simple fitting. This is a diplomatic negotiation. Your tailor circles you like a hawk assessing prey. Head tilted, eyes narrowed, hands clasped behind his back as if contemplating your worth as a physical structure. He makes small, thoughtful noises, half hum, half judgment, as he examines your shoulders, your stance, your hopes, your dreams. He adjusts your lapel with the delicacy of a surgeon and the authority of someone who could ruin your entire year with one poorly placed stitch. The tailor-client relationship is built on trust, unequal trust. You trust him completely, and he trusts his own skills. Tailors in the Regency era wield an almost supernatural level of influence. They determine the slope of your shoulders, the breadth of your silhouette, the sharpness of your social impact. They sculpt not only fabric, but reputation. A good tailor can transform a man into a paragon of elegance. A bad one can doom him to lifelong mockery. As he measures your chest, he mutters numbers to himself, scribbles on a scrap of paper, and contemplates your destiny. You attempt small talk, always a mistake. He shushes you quietly, concentrating on the drape of your coat with the intensity of someone diffusing a bomb made of muslin and pride. In this room, you're not a customer, you're raw materials. Then come the pins everywhere, sharp, judgmental little reminders that beauty requires suffering. He tucks fabric at your waist, brushes lint from your shoulder, and steps back with the dramatic flair of an artist assessing a masterpiece, or possibly a clay pot that needs total reconstruction. You remain frozen, praying you don't inhale too deeply and send a pin directly into your ribcage. Choosing fabric is another ordeal. Your tailor unfurls bolt after bolt of shimmering wool, crisp linen and velvet so lush it looks edible. He asks which one speaks to you, but he does not want your opinion. He wants to evaluate your taste. Pick something too bold, and he arches an eyebrow so sharply it might slice thread. Pick something too dull, and he sighs softly, disappointed in your lack of ambition. The correct choice is the one that your tailor silently approves of, an unspoken agreement that you will not embarrass each other. Then comes the fitting. You slip on the half-finished coat, it feels promising. The tailor prowls again, tugging here, smoothing there, adjusting seams, reshaping your entire being. The mirror reflects a version of you who could confidently enter any ballroom and maybe even flirt without tripping. You begin to believe. You feel hope. And then he frowns. This is catastrophic. A tailor's frown is a thunderstorm on the horizon. It means something is wrong, something structural, something deep. He mutters, adjusts, pulls a seam, repins an angle. You hold your breath. He steps back again, squints, then, at last, nods. Relief floods your soul like warm tea. But the true test comes when you debut the outfit. At a dinner, a ball, a promenade through the park, strangers glance your way, evaluating the cut of your coat, the fall of your sleeves, the geometry of your shoulders. If your tailor did his job well, you glide through society like a beautifully gilded swan. Compliments follow. Your coat is divine. Your tailor must be exceptional. Your silhouette is sublime. If he failed? People notice. Immediately, they whisper. They pity you. They speculate on whether your tailor has suffered illness, a crisis, or total loss of talent. Worst of all, they assume you lack taste. Because in the Regency era, appearance is politics. And your tailor is your prime minister. By the time you return for your next fitting, you've learned the truth. You don't shape fashion. Fashion shapes you, and your tailor holds the scissors. You step into the ballroom and instantly feel the temperature rise by 20 degrees. Hundreds of bodies are packed together, rustling in layers of fabric, all pretending not to sweat through their finery. Every dance is a negotiation, every bow a gamble, and every turn a strategic maneuver to avoid fainting or stepping on someone important. A Regency ballroom isn't just a room, it is a living organism. It breathes heat, exhales perfume, and hums with layered conversations that all sound vaguely judgmental. You enter as a hopeful participant, but quickly realize you are also prey, performer, diplomat, and overheated mammal all at once. The first assault is sensory. Candlelight bounces off polished floors and white gloves, turning the entire space into a shimmering pressure cooker of elegance. The chandeliers glow with approximately 16 billion candles, each one radiating enough heat to roast a small pheasant. Add to that the collective body warmth of half the county's nobility, and you have achieved gentle inferno. The smell is a cocktail of rosewater, starch, hair pomade, warm wool, and the unmistakable strain of fabric doing everything it can to contain human stress. The air is thick, not unpleasant, just dense enough that you feel you could slice it with a very determined fan. A string quartet soars gracefully at their instruments, each musician sweating more than anyone on the dance floor. Their job is to play endlessly, perfectly and loudly enough to drown out the sounds of corsets creaking and men quietly panicking about their cravats. You attempt your first bow, a simple motion in theory. But your tailcoat restricts the exact angle your spine can bend, and your stays or waistcoat remind you that breathing is a conditional privilege. You execute the bow anyway, hoping you resemble someone elegant rather than someone trying not to pass out. Now the dancing begins. A partner approaches. You smile. They smile. Both of you pretend neither of you are melting internally. You take their hand, gloved thankfully, and step onto the dance floor, joining a rotating constellation of couples, performing synchronized survival. Dancing in the Regency era requires more than skill. It requires faith. You trust your partner not to crush your feet. You trust your shoes not to betray you. You trust your stockings not to descend at precisely the wrong moment. You trust your hair not to collapse under the humidity of 200 perspiring aristocrats. Your first turn is smooth, elegant, even. The second is acceptable. The third is a near-death experience as your gown attempts to wrap around your ankles like a silken anaconda. You recover with grace, or at least with plausible deniability. Around you, couples glide and swirl with varying levels of success. Some move like practiced swans. Others move like people desperately trying to look calm while their internal monologue screams. Everyone is sweating but pretending not to. You feel a bead of perspiration roll down your back. You ignore it. So does everyone. Then the subtext kicks in. Every gesture means something. A lowered eyelid suggests intrigue. A misplaced step implies gossip. A lingering hand says, "I am mildly interested in you," whereas a too firm hand says, I intend to propose marriage before supper. You must read body language while also maintaining perfect posture, elegant steps, and enough oxygen flow to remain conscious. The ballroom is therefore not just a dance floor, it is politics. Reputation, influence, romantic possibility, scandal in waiting. You move strategically, adjusting your position to align yourself with good fans, strong breezes, and people less likely to gossip about your missteps. Finally, the music ends. Partners bow. You curtsy. Everyone claps softly, pretending not to be exhausted. You retreat to the edge of the room, fanning yourself with desperate delicacy, praying for cool air but receiving only the vague hint of a draught from a distant doorway. And yet, as your lungs finally catch up, as your pulse slows, as candlelight flickers across the room, you understand why people endure this. The ballroom is magical, absurd, overheated, socially perilous, but magical. For a few shining moments, under 1,000 candles and impossible expectations, you are part of something beautiful, even if your feet are dying and your fan is working overtime. You attempt to flirt, only to discover Regency romance is less. Follow your heart, and more follow 17 strict rules while your entire family watches. Every glance is recorded, every touch is documented. Your mother is suddenly a full-time intelligence operative. Falling in love feels less like butterflies and more like filing paperwork in emotional triplicate. Regency courtship is not romantic spontaneity. It is a bureaucratic obstacle course drenched in lace. The moment you express even mild interest in someone, the entire household mobilizes. Your father becomes a background strategist. Your siblings become informants. Your aunt, mysteriously well-connected, already knows the person's income, land holdings, family history, potential illnesses, and the scandal involving their grandfather's pigeon collection. Meanwhile, you're just trying to make eye contact without fainting. Every interaction is structured, controlled, supervised. You meet your potential romantic interest in public spaces only. Ballrooms, garden parties, morning calls. Private moments are forbidden. Anything more intimate than standing 40 inches apart is considered morally dangerous. Even a walk through the garden requires a chaperone, usually someone old enough to knit, nap, and police your behaviour simultaneously. A single glance can change your fate. If you look too long, you seem desperate. Too short, uninterested. Glance at the wrong moment and 3 separate mothers will notice, whispering like Regency stenographers recording emotional data. By the end of the evening, everyone in the room knows exactly how you feel, even if you don't. Flirting is a delicate art form. A raised eyebrow conveys intrigue. A dropped glove conveys availability. A carefully executed bow can communicate more longing than an entire modern dating app. But each action carries risk. Every gesture may be interpreted, reinterpreted, and aggressively debated by nosy relatives, rival suitors, and anyone standing within 50 feet of you. Touch, of course, is a high-stakes endeavour. Brushing fingertips during a dance is equivalent to writing a page-long confession of devotion. If someone accidentally touches your elbow, wedding rumours ignite like Regency tinder. A hand placed too firmly, scandal, too lightly, insult, too lingering. Prepare for an intervention, and despite all this external pressure, the rules continue. You may not speak privately. You may not walk unaccompanied. You may not compliment someone too directly. And under no circumstances may you show genuine emotion without approval from the committee of relatives who now run your romantic life like a governing board. The dance floor becomes your safest battlefield. Here, at least, touching is allowed, as long as it is choreographed, supervised, and brief. Your heart pounds as you take your partner's gloved hand for a single turn, trying to convey your entire soul through palm pressure while also maintaining correct footwork and pretending not to sweat. Outside the ballroom, courtship requires paperwork-level diligence. You must send appropriate notes, respond to appropriate notes, interpret ambiguous notes, and politely ignore notes sent by people attempting to sabotage your match. Families exchange letters like diplomatic envoys, alliances form, rivalries erupt, aunts gather intelligence faster than spies, and then the calling stage begins. Suitors visit homes under the scrutiny of every relative within a 10-mile radius. Conversations remain painfully polite. Weather, poetry, agriculture, the occasional mutual disdain for Napoleon. Anything remotely emotional must be filtered through metaphor. You don't say "I like you," you say "the gardens are quite pleasant this season," and hope they get the hint. As your feelings grow, so does the surveillance. Neighbours watch, servants observe, chaperones hover. Every walk, every shared smile, every stifled laugh becomes fodder for the Regency rumour economy. You are one misinterpreted gesture away from either engagement or exile. And yet, despite the pressure, the rules, the constant scrutiny, something oddly magical happens. A glance across a room becomes electric. A shared joke feels illicit. A brief touch during a dance thunders through your entire being. Romance is rare, restricted, rationed, and therefore powerful, intense, precious. So you navigate the emotional bureaucracy, you survive the observers, you charm the parents, endure the gossip, and follow the 17 rules with trembling precision. Because somewhere in the middle of all this structured chaos, something soft and genuine grows, and when it finally blooms, it feels like victory, not just of love, but of surviving the most heavily monitored romance system in history. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets and let your eyes grow heavy, take a quiet moment to appreciate just how far fashion and your spine have come since the Regency era. You've spent the evening navigating a world where shirts were sheer, trousers were hazardous, and waistlines sat somewhere near your collarbone. A world where courtship required a witness, gloves carried more emotional weight than therapy, and every outfit demanded the flexibility of a trained acrobat. And somehow people survived all of that. They walked, danced, swooned, and lived entire lives inside those absurdly tight seams. They dealt with tailors who ruled their destinies, ballrooms that doubled as saunas, and hairstyles one candle away from spontaneous combustion. And still, they found beauty, humour, and even romance in the middle of it all. There's a kind of courage in that, or at least a very stubborn commitment to looking fashionable while suffering. Because history's funny like that. For every hardship, there's a moment of charm. For every ridiculous fashion trend, there's a glimpse of humanity trying its best to express itself, even while barely able to breathe. And the people of the Regency era were no different. They endured corsets, fans, cravats, powdered everything, and social rules thicker than their stockings, yet they laughed, danced, loved, and somehow managed to keep going. So as you drift off tonight in your soft, stretchy pyjamas, blessed by elastic central heating and modern laundry, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the past. Thank you to the people who endured itchy fabrics, restrictive tailoring, and fashion standards designed by someone clearly having a personal crisis. Because their resilience, their creativity, and their wonderfully ridiculous clothing remind us that humans have always been a little dramatic, and that's what makes history worth smiling about. Sleep well,